We kick off with a boy pleading with the holy sword, begging it to obey his request. That was the hero's Excalibur ability, pure power on demand, but it wrecks the user, draining energy like crazy, and every time it's used, it feels like they're treating it as the top priority. And the girls aren't just swinging magic swords, they're blasting out thunder judgment and ripping through with all their other savage powers too. While the kid in the back was blasting out magic to help everyone, he didn't just grow his own power. He started boosting other people's spells too, and soon enough, he even went on to repair the magic swords. And then he rushes to apologize to one of the girls, the one who ended up being last to heal everyone. Every single member of the crew hit their full power the moment it counted, and handed the whole mess straight to the protagonist, while everyone else found their own way to keep going. But just a few days later, Allan, this so-called hero, pulls Ishua aside and drops the bombshell. He's been banished. Shaken to his core, he blurts out, "What happened?" "It hit out of nowhere, you're about to banish it. It was meant to drain every drop of power," but Allan doesn't blast anything, he just tells Ishua to shut up. Everybody in the group never got messed with by power, at least that's what Ishua insists, claiming it was because he was helping everyone, but Allan snapped back fast, calling Ishua a liar and swearing he couldn't possibly have that kind of power. Allan seethed, saying the truth was simple. Ishua was just a useless guy, always getting swarmed by the girls in their group, and she'd never be satisfied with something like that. Then Allan breaks it down, this was a group decision, and when the call lands, Ishua freezes, utterly paralyzed. She can't accept that this was the whole group's call, so she snaps at Ishua, telling him to disappear. After wandering a lost stretch through the forest, Ishua never saw it coming. He got banished out of nowhere. Manabearer is a magical job that forces the whole group to drain huge amounts of power, and it's so essential that the members who take it end up swallowing massive energy just to keep it going. And since they can't use magic, they're basically the kind of people who live behind the curtain, doing all the real work no one sees, though Allan, for one, thinks that makes them losers. And yeah, heroes, saints, mages, even women carrying magical swords are all in this mix, because this crew's packed with roles that burn through power like crazy. Fighting won't be easy while they're trying to calm the power and keep it steady from here on out. Isuha's already panicking for everyone, and if this is what the whole crew decides, then there's no backing out. But then a voice snapped Ishua's focus. He spun around with a jolt, scared out of his mind, trying to figure out what on earth was going on. It turns out one of the girls did it, and that crush of relief makes Ishua feel pure happiness. She smelled like a woman, but he swore it wasn't anything like that. There, right in front of them, stood Saint Julia, always pressing Ishua with one question: why did you leave everyone behind? She wasn't just part of the heroes group. She also worked side by side with Ishua at the Royal Adventurers Academy. Ishua can't stop replaying the moment he abandoned everyone, and he insists it was some unanimous call, until the saint snaps back that it makes zero sense since the group only kicks people out like this when they're spilling that much power. The protagonist tries to explain it was exactly what Allan said, but Julia gets separated in the confusion, left staring at the truth like, so why is that guy thinking he's the hero acting like this? Ishua couldn't help feeling a little happy about it, like he finally understood his own move, while Julia seemed ready to yank him back, then changed her mind and decided from that moment on she was going to follow him. Ishua is left totally baffled. She blurts that if she pulled something like that, it'll only bring trouble crashing back down on her again, but Julia snaps back that she never wants a hero to get cast out like this. Because Ishua had been helping her since the very start of her life, everything she became was all thanks to him, so yeah, that's exactly why she turned out like she did. Then the girl shoots her hand up, asking to go with him right as Ishua freezes in embarrassment, and somehow ends up grinning anyway. And ends up thanking her. Right after Ishua asks how he was found, the girl panics. She admits she purposely had a lock of the protagonist's hair, so she used search magic to track him down, then they decide to move forward. Julia grills Ishua about what he's doing next, and before anyone can even blink, time's already ticking while they and Ishua stride toward the nearest city to get ready for their trip, until they suddenly hear someone out there begging for help. The whole band of knights was in deep trouble, and Ishua immediately threw himself in, determined to help everyone. As everyone expected, the moment Yeshua got involved, a lord immediately demanded, "Who are you?" And Yeshua answered that he'd step in and help everyone using his magic power. But it was a medium-class monster, one of those brutal fights that trips up beginner adventurers, the kind that even makes a saint's legend feel earned, a genius saint who's famous for raw power. At that moment, Julia was unleashing a brutal power, so high level it could even hit the maximum tier of magic, and with a casual flick, she wiped the enchantment clean, meaning the power she had been using was packed with enchantments. She was totally buzzing with excitement, but the combo he could pull off had a hard limit, so Ishuo stepped in, pushing the magic power higher while deliberately sinking everyone's attributes through a circle too. He slams every ounce of power into the girl, convinced it'll drain it down. Then she snaps into that innocent chant, and suddenly a massive power explodes out, making everyone's courage crumble on the spot. Even the wolves erased from existence, gone without a trace. The undead that were just wandering around get wiped clean, poof, gone from existence for good. The explosion ripped through everything, massive, loud, and impossible to ignore. Julia can't believe what she just saw. This is a brand new kind of magic she's only now starting to learn. Ishuo tells her you went way too far, because somehow you ended up healing every scrap of impunity, and now it's all turned into a holy island, yet the girl just keeps smiling and Ishuo is left totally baffled. And the Lord turns and demands, so who were those two? After a while, with the Lord's help, they finally roll into the city, and Ishuo wastes no time thanking him for steering him back to the village. The truth is, the Lord didn't just guide them there, he brought them straight to the city to personally thank them. That's all there is to it. And when you first hear about this kind of powerful magic, it blows your mind, because Ishuo can even trigger it through magic transfer. That should be impossible, but he makes the impossible happen anyway. Julia can't fire her magic at her own scale, so Ishuo steps in like a living conduit, pumping mana to her. Then I gotta say, he can actually grasp high-level magic the moment you see him, and when he fine-tunes the power. That's not just skill, that's superhuman. A plate of nuts shows up and the Lord snaps in pure irritation, telling them not to hand that to his savior, only for the girl to gulp out an apology, saying they've been running low on power lately, so they can't just magic up only that. Ishuo blurts out what's going on, and the Lord answers, this is a small life in the end, I can't keep the refinery running all by myself. At first, they were built from giant seeds just to run the refinery, but once maintenance got ignored, the output crashed hard, and that's exactly why they couldn't spare a single penny to fix anything. So yeah, they're trapped in a vice in a far-off future, and this village is probably about to vanish for good. Ishuo and Julia locked eyes and agreed, if they didn't have the power to get out, they'd leave it to Ishuo to handle. The Lord only said, I asked him to thank me, and nothing beyond that, because they didn't want to drag more trouble onto Ishuo. Julia snapped back that it was totally fine, because Ishuo wasn't faking it at all, he was just a naturally good guy you could trust and follow. They head straight to the maintenance site, grimy and broken beyond belief, so bad they decide, for years, to handle repairs themselves. Ishuo creeps up, grabs the tool with his hand and snaps, it can't last long like this. Then he slams both hands together with insane power, pushing the energy in until he's fully recharged. Everything suddenly starts blazing with eerie light, then the Lord's confidence cracks and fear hits him hard. Ishuo was already familiar with the way he poured mana from his own body into non-human objects. And yeah, he'd even been the one running the show by keeping the hero team's magic items in perfect working order. Of course, if he dumps enough mana, the attribute gets kicked away fast and boom, everything snaps back to brand new, powered up to the brim. Right after the Lords snap into panic, realizing every dark thing that haunted those machines is finally gone. And now they could tap into power at its absolute peak. If they prepped the setup right, it would be insanely useful. Right then, they were fixing a magic circuit that had been dragging on for ages. Ishuo rushes in with an apology for the delay, but the Lord shuts him down fast, saying it wasn't long at all, and that he packed the equipment with serious power, restored it, and even lent a hand with the magic. It's basically like the kind of work you'd normally see from a whole team of the most powerful engineers. Right after the Lord asks who Yesua is and he introduces himself, he declares plain and bold that he was only a manabearer. The Lord snaps that he can't just accept a man as the answer, and he points out that even the magic the girl used earlier was the kind everyone recognizes. Julia then steps in, introduces herself as someone the church has officially certified as a saint, and says she earned that title for real after everything she went through. The Lord is suddenly stunned, blurting out that, yep, he really did bring a saint to that very place. And if just maybe Yesua ends up being the hero, you'd better brace yourself. As soon as Yesua clears up the misunderstanding and tells Julia to deny it too, the Lord swoops in and apologizes for every last bit of rudeness. Because the Lord declared they were a perfect couple, the girl lit up with pure excitement, so much that she totally blanked on what was even happening around her. The Lord steps in, throws his thanks at every last one of them, and declares it's party time, because the hero just saved their lives and they've gone and brought out the finest alcohol just for him. And it turns out they've been getting everything wrong from the start, because the Lord finally admits he has no clue what the protagonist's real circumstances are, and if he's saying it isn't like that, then it must be wildly different, right after Ishua snaps that they'd never understand everything anyway. Then a woman standing nearby chimes in that she's watched thousands try to pose as the hero, but that one was the most modest and real she'd ever seen. In that village, they weren't listening to anyone else. Even Julia admits he was right. So yeah, turns out Ishua is the real hero, and when fear hits, scared Ishua blurts out. Something cold and wrong kept pressing against him from behind. And Julia blurts out, "What is this supposed to be?" while Ishua stands there completely lost like he has no clue what's happening. Something felt off. Turns out she'd already been drinking alcohol before all of this even happened. And that's how she got smashed, and the whole village followed, downing drink after drink until everyone was drunk. Julia lunges at him and tries to steal a kiss from the protagonist. Meanwhile, Allan, the real hero, was still trying to force his way into a dark cave. Everyone said that was a high-class dungeon, so Maria snapped that Allan might be right because they were about to charge a high-level dungeon without Ishua, while Marcella shot back that the real problem wasn't just Ishua, they were also missing Julia. Allan couldn't shake the feeling that trouble was coming in that bathroom. After all, Ishua and the others were right there with them. Allan finally blurts out, "SHH, don't worry," says it's fine that useless people aren't around, and orders them to follow him. Girls lock eyes with each other, like they're about to team up on something big. And then it all finally came down to this. And that's how the fallen hero's legend ends, swept into darkness. And there was the manabearer, just crowned as the hero moments ago. Back in the village, everyone buzzed with excitement over Ishua, begging him to come back and visit again until he finally tried to explain, "I'm not the hero anymore," but they just wouldn't hear him. Right in the middle of that mess, Julia asked if it was really okay, and the villagers only doubled down, convinced Ishua was still their hero because he saved them. Right after they ask where they're headed, Yeshua drops the real reason: he wanted to run back for the license and then sign up to register as an adventurer. It felt like I was getting reborn from scratch. Meanwhile, deep in that cave, Allan grabs his magic sword once more and unleashes it again. He can't shake the feeling that this dungeon isn't high class at all. It's way too easy, no mana bearer, no saint, nothing to back up the hype. See, every dungeon in the world gets ranked by the Adventurers Guild from laughably low to brutally dangerous. Sure, rookies might clear it, but veteran adventurers usually get shut out of anything with a high classification. Maria finally tells him they've got to figure out the power to go back, because Ishua wasn't there, and Marcella adds that Julia wasn't there either, so they can't keep getting slammed like this. Allan finally blurts out that those two were completely useless. And yeah, all those cowards would have been sprinting away from high-class dungeons, so the mana bearer felt useless, until Maria remembered what Ishua always preached. The best mana bearer is the one who keeps the whole party from fearing mana corruption. Then she's seconds away from getting attacked. And somehow he dodged a total obliteration, shutting that monster down once and for all. While all that chaos raged, Marcella was right there, tearing through monsters like she owned the battlefield. Allan went all in, swinging with everything he had, then said the group was flawless and they had nothing to fear. But right when you think it can't get any weirder, something finally snaps into place. And she has no clue something's off with Maria's magic sword. Just as she's talking, she realizes Ishua isn't there, so there's no way she can keep leaning on that power forever. Marcella's magic is about to hit its breaking point. Allan refuses to swallow the fact that they're calling them partners of the hero group, so he clenches his resolve and makes a request to his holy sword. But then his head starts pounding and he crumples to the ground, completely lost. Allan couldn't make sense of what was happening. His head throbbed so hard it felt like it was about to split in two. But it wasn't just a bad feeling, his body was running on empty, and this had never happened to him before. Allan's got way more power in the tank than a normal person, so as long as he sticks to his usual abilities, he doesn't have to sweat running out. That holy sword power wrecked him with massive energy demands. He was even supposed to hit a mana shortage just by becoming a hero, but the king tossed him straight into a group with Ishua, and somehow that crushing drawback never landed. The girls ask if Allan's okay, and he just freezes with pure terror. because he realizes a lizard is lurking there and it's a high-class monster. He could have wiped out that monster with ease until now, because suddenly it felt like the tables turned and he wasn't the hunter anymore, he was the meal. Allan whips his back around and bolts, yelling for Marcella to follow and keep him safe, only for her to snap back that Maria is still in the fight. So he lays it out, if they keep going like this, their lives will get hammered again and again, and it turns out they're way more important than some girl swinging a magic sword, so the hero's survival has to come first. Marcella snaps, drops her head, and tells Allan to cut the questions. She can't walk away from friends who are tough enough to fight for their own lives. And Allan has no right to call himself a hero, because if she had no power left, all she can do now is swing her staff like a weapon and slam it into anything that comes her way. Allan demands why she's throwing physical attacks, but Maria grabs the final opening and finishes the monster. Then the girls fall into a back-to-back stance, ready for whatever comes next. Maria pulls Marcella aside and demands she remember Ishua's training for fighting without power, because that lesson is everything. But Allan's the one who ignored that training. Now he's getting torn apart by those monsters, screaming his lungs out. Maria throws herself in to help Allan, and that single push makes the monster slam down to the ground. Then she leans in and snaps that she'd never ditch a loyal companion unlike him. And now they refuse to quit, no matter what, until the very end, because they'd face it together and head back as one. Right after he barely managed to get back, the dungeon's opening finally came into view. Somehow, everyone's running on fumes. Maria hadn't been in a pure sword fight in ages, and now the moment you brush magic onto your blade, things instantly spiral into pure chaos. Allan blurts out, "So what are we doing? Why are we laughing right now?" Because they just fled that fight without even beating the dungeon. And the crazy part is this, he was only meant to use magic, but he started swinging that staff like a weapon, while the magic swordwoman relied on daggers, not anything hero-like. So how is that even a real hero group, especially when he wiped out every enemy on the road? And if that were true, it meant he was the reason they crashed. But Maria finally blurts out that Allan was the first to drain his magic, and Allan snaps back that it was just a headache. Then Maria scolds him for trying to sling the holy sword everywhere, while Marcella laughs it off and says there's no point talking to someone like him. Both of them shot him a brutal look, and when Allan sees how certain they are, he can't help but wonder what's behind those stares. And since the night was already creeping in, they should have crashed in the nearest village, only he couldn't figure out why everyone kept shooting him weird looks and rambling about that village. When he gets there, it's the very village Ishua once helped, and the people are grinning like life finally makes sense. Allan introduces himself like the hero he is because they've been struggling through a brutal dungeon and all they want is an inn to rest. The lady even asks if there's another hero, and Allan presses her for what's going on. She leans in and tells him, Ishua was here, an absolute legend, teaming up with Julia, and together they changed everything for everyone. Right after she snaps whether that failure counts as a hero, the lady blows a fuse and snarls that he has no right to talk about the hero Ishua like that. Then his fury explodes. He snaps that Ishua is nothing but a vicious faker, a total nobody the hero himself kicked out of the group, and he goes off saying Ishua has absolutely no right to talk about anything like that. The girls stare at the shock of this banishment, baffled, because Allan swears Ishua walked out on his own, yet he brushes it off fast, telling them to be whisked to the best inn and chug the strongest magic power recovery potions they've got. The lady leans in and asks, do you have money? If I need it, will you pay? Then Allan's fuse snaps. He fires back, demanding if the guy even plans to ask for money just so Allan can collect items across the city. That's one of the hero's perks, and every city should fall in line with it. So the lords bristle, and Maria finally blurts out, wait, what are you talking about right now? And even then, it was only for those rare, special circumstances. Then crowds start to ring them in, weapons raised, and the lady snaps that Allan finally showed who he really is, no hero at all, because he's been stealing money from people right at this moment. She snaps that he's being ridiculous, and the lady adds that Ishua wouldn't even take their thanks, totally nothing like him. Then Allan tries to explain himself, and ends up with an egg smashed right in his face. And suddenly everyone's hounding him, demanding he leave, because they're not about to put up with that kind of behavior. And Maria snaps, saying they've got to leave right now, because there's absolutely no staying here. Then Allan, sprinting ahead, whips around and yells that everyone has to remember this moment while they're still running. Maria can't stop wondering why he banished Ishua and whether lying right then was the right move. She snaps everyone to silence, making it clear she just wants to keep an incompetent nobody from dragging the hero group into a mess. Maria finally got it how much Ishua meant to the group, just like Marcella, so she shot back, asking if he'd apologize now and pointing out that beating a dungeon without Ishua was impossible. Before it could spiral, Allan barked at everyone to shut up, because at that moment they were all holding back and they better not start bossing him around. And if they're demanding to get banished too, the girls just freeze, no words, pure shock. And Allan can't stop thinking, what if he just said the worst thing possible? Maria snapped that if he was spewing that kind of stuff, there was no point staying in that group, especially without Ishua, and that he wasn't worth being a hero for. They weren't following him to win, they were just being dragged along to lose their own lives, and it was a brutal, terrible mess. Then Allan doesn't even tell those two they owe him for getting them into that hero group. He just watches as they toss their cards aside and move on, leaving them to grab any magic power potion they need to crawl back into that high-class dungeon. Allan says that was an honorable license for the hero group, but they're handing it back. Allan blurts out that sure, he might take some time, but he'll eventually find new members, and because he's that legendary guy, he can stir up a rebellion across the whole continent for his cause. Girls say if that's really true. They don't stick around, they pull back to watch from a distance, and then they leave. So now they're stuck, unsure what to do right then, because this isn't abandonment, so they decide to march up to Ishua and demand what's going on. Marcella pulled out her own detection ability, and somehow she was also carrying Ishawa's hair for no clear reason, like she was already set for anything that might happen. Maria stared and called it a wild coincidence because she had a detection ability too, and somehow she'd ended up with Ishawa's hair as well. Then the two of them burst into laughter, basically shaking the whole room with it, claiming it was an absolutely wild coincidence. And the two of them unleashed their abilities at the same time. And the final stop was a quiet little town packed with rookies just up the road. Then Allan snaps at them, tells them to stop messing around with him, and insists he's the hero. Stuff like that simply shouldn't happen. But hold up, Allan's suddenly toying with the idea of recruiting Ishua again, and with Ishua already getting expelled, he's gotta be in some serious trouble, unless he's about to burst into tears of pure joy when it works. Right after Allan taps his discovery skill, he unleashes a one-of-a-kind power that lets the hero pinpoint where his own group is. With his license in hand, Ishua landed in a brand new city, right where he'd been expecting to arrive. The second Ishua finally arrives in his city. Julia finally says they've reached the novice city, the exact moment she's been waiting for so she can snag her new adventurer license. She realizes her power isn't as mighty as she thought. But her offense and defense weren't even the real story. Her true power lived in her brain and her magic, exactly like you'd expect from the Saint of the Heroes. Now it was Ishua's turn, right there in the Novice Adventurers Guild. Julia and Ishua dropped their hero badges. Now they were ready to walk into the system as brand new adventurers. That crystal was the yardstick for their status, and every rank was coded from the letter **F all the way up to **S***. The moment his hand taps the ball, it erupts into an unbelievable, dazzling glow. Everyone starts scratching their heads because what they're seeing is unreal. No way a manabearer should be pulling off something like this. To reach that kind of status, you've gotta stack it right. His strength hit a class, his attacks landed at B class, his defense stayed B class, and his intelligence was a class 2, and that's how only the right kind of hero ends up shining. The receptionist's gaze flicked over Ishua's magic power, and the reading flashed SSS class. Every single adventurer gets totally thrown off because they've never seen that kind of classification before, and now they're all thinking, should we smash that mechanism? They're ready to try another route, but the device is pointing dead straight, and Julia can't shake the shock of watching Ishu run out of mana for the first time. The proof hit the moment the Saint showed up. This mana bearer carried an absurdly high rank no one had ever seen, and Isha's magic never ran out, so yeah, if he wanted, he could spend skill points anytime. Realizing just how terrifyingly brilliant he was, and then realizing the Saint was a genius too. His adventurer rank is medium class, and from this moment on, they're officially adventurers, but when everyone clicks, panic hits hard because how could they ever start off like that? Everyone freaks out except Ishua, who insists they shouldn't get special treatment. Everyone keeps asking Isha to let them into his crew or to let him into the people's group, and they swear both sides will pay them extremely well. Ishua can't stop wondering what's going on because Julia is painfully shy, and there's no way she can hold onto Saint mode for long. Yasuo tells Julia she's a saint, then admits he's just a manabearer with little worth. Turns out the only person who can't stand the chaos steps in and snaps everyone to silence, calling it a total disaster of a mistake, and yells for everyone to stop moving toward Ishua, because when Ishua finally pays close attention, he realizes it wasn't just a random thing at all, it was his sister. Her name is Diana, the Sword Saint herself, an adventurer so legendary she sits at the very top of the highest rank. Liliana, the heroine who just crushed a terrifying demon, one of the 4 kings from the demon kingdoms. So now everyone's spinning out over control, and Diana finally snaps, telling everyone to cut it out. Right then, the crowd halts as she demands to know what's going on. And if Ishua wanted to tag along too, right after the chaos hit and Diana was chasing down her Sword Saint classification for the recruitment battle, Ishua threw out an apology, saying they just wanted to team up for a bit, and that the leader was already hero qualified so they could return anytime. Julia jumps in, blurting that they'd wrestled with a hero who didn't even grasp his own power. Then Diana fires back that Liliana isn't like that at all. But Julia won't let it go, pushing hard. How can you trust a leader who won't even show up to meet the person herself? Diana finally sees just how brutal the situation really is. Ishua shot Julia an apology, saying she was only worried about what she'd said earlier, because this was the first time he'd actually meet Diana and he feels like she's someone he can trust. But if Diana truly trusts Liliana, then she should be calm too. Yasuo admits he got banished, and for a while he even considered sticking with only the people he already knew, when Diana steps in, apologizes for everything that went down, and finally they both get what's truly happening. She ends up apologizing to Liliana herself, admitting she botched the most important mission of all, recruiting her own brother, because it didn't happen. And yeah, some people swear Diana's reputation speaks for itself because she comes off as genuine through and through. And yeah, maybe just this once they'll finally say yes to the offer, because she has to be an absolute can't-miss legendary heroine. Right as Diana gets her heroine back, she's begging for forgiveness, because somehow she still managed to blow it. It was one tiny detail in her magical craft, train harder, and the whole thing gets messier and more intricate. And even Diana, who doesn't really grasp magic work, can still feel that truth. Then Diana hurls her magic ball up into the sky, and just like that it vanishes. Her eyes snap open. She finally admits she gets it. Everyone's got their own struggles, and Ishua can't be saved just because someone wants to. Liliana was a total genius, so famous for the hero's job they handed her the moment she was born, and every time she crushes one of the 4 corners of the heroes, her legend explodes even louder. Everyone else says the same thing. Even after she becomes arrogant, she's gotta keep training, no excuses, just push harder. Still, as a hero, she had to carry every shred of knowledge she'd gathered. Then her emotions spiraled out of control and wrecked everything. The girl breaks down and starts crying nonstop. Diana was left wondering why something like that happened, because if Ishua hated her that badly, even Diana didn't know who that poor little girl, sobbing nonstop, was. Then Diana pushes Liliana to meet him face to face so she can talk with him and figure out what kind of person he really is, only for Liliana to snap back. There's no way I can do something like that. But then Diana blurts it out. Liliana had been smitten the very first time she saw him, way back before he even crossed her mind again. And now Liliana can't stop staring, shocked they finally got to see him only after so much time lost wandering the city. So they should jump into that same mission to get them over the hump, just a little nudge to get things rolling. And honestly, it's so Diana, of course she'd pull that exact move. She was still a total little kid pacing back and forth, and at her age it was only natural for her to fall headfirst in love. But for Liliana, it turned into one seriously great meeting. Next morning, right outside the Adventurers Guild, Ishua and Julia stood shoulder to shoulder and declared it. This was the start of their life as real adventurers. Right from the crack of morning, the mission board was packed, line after line of people ready to grab the very first missions handed out that day. They get swarmed by so many people in that place that fear hits them hard. Right beside it, a mission waited, scrolls dumped on the table, and he leaned in, trying to read the requests. And just as they're about to get going, a receptionist walking by snaps in that they need to start the activities right this second, right after the requests sitting on that table. Ishua finally asks what's going on. Turns out they need help with a power reactor because taking down a horde is Julia's absolute specialty, and somehow, someone's out there hunting for a cat too. Those cat requests? Totally fine because they're about to grab every single one sitting on that table. The receptionist checks if everything's okay, and the truth is, these aren't just random requests, they've been loving every single one. Then the girl basically shrugs and says, yeah, that's just like Ishua, always thinking he's the kind of guy who'd take requests that aren't good enough. And right after, Ishua shoots back, okay, what's going on? The receptionist shrugs and says those missions got tossed because the payoff was trash for the risk, and nobody believed anyone could pull that off. Ishua, in the end, convinces himself it was just a weird little errand to find a cat. Then they start ringing every corner of the city, calling out for all the cats, until they finally find the one they're hunting. They weren't hunting any random cat, it had to be the exact one from the request, and sure enough, they finally tracked it down. While that chaos unfolded, Liliana and even Diana stayed locked in, watching their every move. Liliana quizzed them on how long it took to track down that cat. Since it wasn't a mission or tied to any magic, she expected it would take a whole day or maybe even their entire lives. But then reality hit. Cat was found in just 30 minutes. Right after that, the next mission slammed into place: take down a whole horde of undead before they overwhelm you. Julia finishes with a single crushing blow. Ishua admits she overdid it again, and that's because working with him always pushes her too far. Then Liliana gets lost in thought, stunned that someone could pull off something like this. A whole horde of undead wiped out using raw magic power alone, no pricey potions needed. But maybe it wasn't the manabearer standing right beside them, because then they hit you with, next time, we're definitely gonna need help. But somehow they restored all 32 reactor powers, and honestly that comeback was absolutely unreal. Then a pack of villains crashes onto the scene, claiming they're in charge of those reactors, were from a rival company, and the real trouble starts when they make it clear they're the ones causing the chaos. Then the rival company's leader snarls that he should move in and wipe out those reactors the same way, and Liliana fires back, now it's your turn. Ishua yells for everyone to hide, heart racing as he tries to figure out his next move, because there are way too many people to cut down one by one. Still, they're just humans and the power actors are everywhere around him. With Julia packing those huge, wide-scale attacks, it's not even worth trying to use anything like that. That's really how it is. He slams a barrier around himself, sealing himself in. The crowd starts shouting, wait, what on earth is going on? Then it hits, some of them suddenly feel it in their head. That was a top-tier magic technique, pure focus that slings your magic power recovery into overdrive, but it also brings nausea and a nasty headache, especially for anyone not used to magic power jobs. Leaving only one standing, he blurts out, how could you handle something like that? Ishua realizes the truth, that wasn't some normal dude at all, but an adventurer hired for cold cash. He needs to be the kind of guy who can drop people fast with something like that. Then he unleashes a magic power and hurls it right down on that guy again, even though he's still standing. And that finally knocks him right off his feet, crashing him to the ground. They demanded to know what he was doing, then he admitted it. He shoved magic power straight into that guy, and he did it without mercy because the situation demanded it. It was like the magic hit him like an intoxicating poison, and just like that, he dropped and passed out. So yeah, turning up the magic power swirling around the area just to use it as a straight-up attack was originally a trick meant to help someone recover magic, but Ishua's magic was so far beyond the human limit that this is why they're showing it off. Liliana says maybe next time you'll need me, but Diana is already shutting that down, because by the time they hit that line, the mess they're in won't need saving anymore. While all that chaos was unfolding, Allan bursts into the city at last. Dang, he finally closed in on that place. Right then, Ishua decides to head back to the city, while everyone in the adventurers' crowd is buzzing about him, stunned that he's in a class powerhouse and that he's still taking the brutal missions nobody else dares touch. So the receptionist tells Ishua he's suddenly getting popular, and Ishua insists it must be a big misunderstanding. He's just been taking the missions. Then Allan bursts in, saying he finally tracked Ishua down. Ishua and Julia stared back, totally stunned, like their minds couldn't even wrap around what just happened. And Ishua blurts what happened to Maria and Marcella. Allan snarls back that he dumped those two fools, and Ishua fires off. Why were you trying to throw away two women who are clearly fully talented? Then Allan grins and declares, that's my move, and suddenly it's good news for the two adventurers stuck below the lowest rank in that tiny city, because he's ready to pull them into the heroes group. Everyone stared in disbelief at what was happening right in front of them. Allan demands to know what's really going wrong, then tells them to be grateful for what's happening and says they can head back to the glorious heroes' side, but he doesn't even realize people are already whispering insults about him. He can't stop wondering what was so hilarious in that exact moment. Then the adventurers spill it. They once heard a tale from the saint about that stupid hero who kicked Ishua out of the group. Allan can't believe people treated him like the dumbest hero in town, so he fires back, "What are you even talking about? Because they're not some bottom-tier fools at all. Right now, these guys are medium class," but Allan's like, "Maybe you should have told new adventurers to aim for extremely low class instead." That's why they were grinning like crazy, because his banishment somehow brought them extraordinary adventurers, and soon a bunch of people showed up there too, even though he might have been struggling and totally short on magic power, and it made everything feel unbearable right in that moment. Allan's irritation spikes and he snaps that he should shout at those people right now. Then Ishua steps in, calm but firm, saying they're handling things great and they have zero plans to loop back to the group. And if he's got no other missions lined up, that would be awesome. Allan couldn't wrap his head around it. Ishua actually turned down his offer, and not only that, a bunch of people laughed at him too. Getting rejected by that loser wasn't something he could just swallow. Right then, Allan grabs his sword and spins toward Ishua, only for Diana to suddenly show up and shout at him to stop. Allan blurts, "What was she doing right in front of me?" And Diana cuts in that being in the guild is strictly forbidden, so now, because of this mess, she's his opponent, and if he wants to handle it, she'll settle everything. While she was talking, a tremor ripped through his body, pure, towering intimidation. He realized she was dangerous, so he snapped around, turned his back, and bolted before she could stop him, saying it was enough for today and that maybe, just maybe, he'd come back another day to fix what was left, until Diana snapped that it was awful to watch that guy miss the difference between two people entirely. Right then and there, Ishua turns around and thanks her. Diana snaps that he doesn't owe her a single thank you because Ishua's got zero standing in the general memories, so of course he can't piece everything together now. And she reveals his name is Isper and hopes he won't stir up trouble anytime soon. And the story keeps going day after day. They grind non-stop, fighting to knock out every single request they're handed. About a week later, Ishua got hit with a mission straight to the elf village, report the unbelievable stuff to the guild, and just that job alone handed him a clean 30 gold coins. Then Ishua starts scratching his head about why they're even here, turning down those low-reward requests that just don't make sense for a veteran adventurer who won't waste his time. Because sure, 30 measly gold coins is something, but there has to be more, and it's downright suspicious that the client's name isn't written anywhere. Ishua couldn't stand the thought of putting Julia in that mess, so when the receptionist tells him, "Just go to the elf village and say everything's fine," Ishua snaps back, "Hold on just a moment. Seriously, was there really even a case like that? Why didn't anyone take it sooner?" Until right then, the receptionist suddenly totally blanks and promises she'll explain what's really going on. It's not a rumor at all, this is the guild straight up sending a direct request to Ishua. Ishua says it wasn't some big mystery at all, he was always there, taking every request, so they finally pushed to edit that special reward, and it better be worth all that money. They cooked up a slick request for Ishua, one that looked totally normal, just to land a fat paycheck, and once he agreed to take a quick look around, the whole thing turned into an unreal trip. So she shrugged and said it was fine, but Julia's mind was already racing. How she could travel with Ishua again, not for some random mission, but just the two of them like that trip she'd done before. So Julia throws out the idea to take that trip at least once in your lifetime, and honestly, she was way more locked in with the missions. Maybe she even pushed hard to help seal the final deal. Yeshua says, "Yeah, it's fine, just rest a little, then we'll head to that place." And the moment he finishes, the air snaps and everyone's hair starts to stand on end. Liliana was the one standing there, just soaking in every detail, and she leaned in to tell Diana, "Don't miss this, our next stop is the elf village. Use the opening, earn their trust, and push forward right now." Even if she was the heroine, her stealth was leveling up fast, but at that moment it didn't help at all, and Diana pushed Liliana. "Did you feel anything different over the past week? And doesn't she think those two were finally in the right mood to jump into a group?" But of course Liliana isn't listening. She barrels up to the receptionist and demands to know if there's any request near that elf village. Then the receptionist leans in and drops the bomb. There's a job to wipe out a mutant monster species lurking nearby, and it's the kind of elite, gut-wrenching mission that only the hardest cases get in this guild, so Diana steps forward to see the whole thing with her own eyes. They asked if it was okay, and of course Liliana kept it cool, so the two of them could stay on track and avoid any trouble. Liliana pushes forward toward that mission, forcing herself to stop staring up at everyone and everything, because at some point, they've got to move on and make real progress. 3 days have dragged by and they've already reached that place, and Julia can finally spot the world tree from far away. And Ishua can't wrap his head around it. There it is, clear as day from that insane distance. He swears it's a legendary tree, guarding the elf village for 200 years and even purifying the air all around it. An angel lit up those islands with a miracle and set them free from the monsters. Then, from the purified seed, a giant tree exploded into life, and soon enough, people started showing up on the island. And in the legend, he's praised for saving the whole world, so people finally get to live in peace there. But Ishua clocks it. Julia adores this tale because she's been staring at the world tree this whole time. Something's seriously off, and Ishua can feel it in the distance. The area around the world tree reeks of weirdness. Maybe he's just imagining it, but Liliana kept fighting tooth and nail, shouting that she couldn't afford to lose sight of Ishua. Diana blurted that she couldn't handle that monstrous count, so he had to sprint on foot toward the world tree, because it was close right as they started gasping for air, like that pressure was choking them, and it could turn into a disaster fast. So they slammed in a massive healing boost right then and there. Diana can hold her breath for that quick purification. She keeps wondering if this miasma is coming from that monster's mutation, and she pushes forward because they've got to find what they're looking for fast. Then a monster lunges at Liliana from behind, right there and right now. Their mission is staring them in the face. Then she blurts out that it'd feel totally wrong if that guy just popped up out of nowhere to finish the mission. After trading blows for a while, Diana got slammed by a brutal strike that whipped her body around, and she instantly realized her attacks just weren't landing anymore. Maybe that monster had to improvise, and in the end it just kept boosting the power it was supposed to unlock, like a king who could absorb every ounce of strength around him. He got promoted into an even higher classification monster. Everyone freezes because they can't help at all, so pay attention for a second, and Liliana hurls her magic straight up into the air. Liliana was born with a hero's power, and it floods her with massive magic, so she can yank her whole group and even their enemies straight into the virtual world she builds with her own hands. Like a wall forged right in the middle of that space. They could bicker over which advantage their setup gave them, because one cheat tier power ran the whole show, hero's mark ****. And that place was untouchable, her private little universe, so every wish had to respect that sacred boundary. Now it was Diana's shot to rise to the spotlight, and the moment her sword lit up, everyone knew her name was about to be written in steel. That's because it was the deadliest sword Liliana could even picture, a fantasy blade that slices through almost anything it locks onto. Then Diana lunges with everything she's got, slamming into the monster to finish it for good. And she snaps into action and starts slicing through. After all that struggle, they finally pulled it off. But that sword couldn't scratch the monster. She got launched back like a thrown spear, crashing with all of its brutal force. They just couldn't wrap their heads around what they were witnessing. After a while, they can't stop wondering what went wrong, because even that special move got reflected. Maybe it landed too weak to matter, and maybe the resistance to magic is just brutal. But then Liliana snaps that her magic is running dry and the fantasy world won't last much longer. Then Diana launches into a full-on assault from every angle, but no matter where she strikes, she just can't land the hit. Irritated, she suddenly clocks the attack barreling straight for her. And the monster slams her with everything it's got. It slams her hard to the side. Liliana is left standing there, completely frozen, like she has no clue what to do next. There's no way she'd die in a place like this. If she wants to face the Demon King, she'll have to rise into a legendary hero. The monster surges toward her, closing the distance like it's already decided her fate. Then Liliana catches Ishua in her gaze because she still hasn't lifted a finger for him yet. Then Liliana suddenly hears someone urging Julia, "Stay right beside me, don't leave my side." Ishua couldn't stop wondering what they were actually trapped in, while Liliana insisted this territory was untouchable, a utopia built for her alone, where nobody slips out or steps in without her say-so. But somehow Ishua still pulled off the impossible and slipped right into that world. Liliana got treated like a born genius, and suddenly everyone and their cousin begged to join her group. No one wanted to miss out on being in the hero's crew. But that was just a little girl, no heroic dream in her heart at all. A kid so easy to trick, she still has to claw her way forward and find her own path. Liliana bolted out of the castle and darted across every direction, clutching her tiny teddy bear like it was her lucky charm. right when she stumbled and the teddy bear slid even farther ahead. Heartbroken, she got up to grab the bear, only to find it filthy, and Liliana's tears burst out like she couldn't hold it together. Someone asked her right then if she was really okay. It was Ishua, and he shot his hand up, ready to lift that little girl to safety. Then the world snapped back to normal, and the monster was seconds from unleashing an attack on her. She swore she couldn't lose, because if she ever lost, it wouldn't count. She was still there because she hadn't done a single thing for that person, yet. Then Ishua materialized right inside her territory, and Liliana just couldn't hold it in. She demanded to know why he was there. Then he sprinted after her, rushing in to shield her from the attack. And the girl scrambles to thank him, only for Ishua to say he spotted her near the castle before, so he might be able to figure out her name, and Julia blurts Diana's name, shattered by injuries so severe she could barely hold herself together. Ishua demands answers. What happened and how did everything fall apart like this? Liliana shoots back, asking how he managed to get into that space. We rewind a bit. Julia fires up her power, purifying everyone around her because she's not just helping, she's chasing a view of the world beyond the world tree. But they still couldn't step into the village because the elves had flat-out banned visitors from the world tree. Only approved people were allowed to enter, and that was it. Right then, they heard the travel guide swear the doors would open, so she dug in and poured out every last ounce of power, purifying everything around her. She snapped, furious that she'd never even heard of anyone being blocked from that village. Then she slammed her power over and over, back and forth, purging everyone clean. Ishua says it's weird, she still can't take them all down. They only stumbled into the highest class monsters, straight-up demon realm trouble, and it's getting messy in ways you can't explain. Then she fires off her power again, trying to figure out if that was some high-class monster, and they're getting wiped out in the blink of an eye. Meanwhile, Ishua can't stop staring at her, wondering what he's supposed to do since she's been acting like that ever since they hit the area. The air got so thick you could almost see it with your own eyes, like the world was choking and they'd better build a way out fast. Shimmering shield of pure magic power surged up around them. After that, the technique supercharged their magic, like magic power could pour in from every direction, filling a whole sea around them. But between the elf village walls, something felt wildly off, so they should patrol the area just to be safe. Because with that kind of concentration in the air, only a few people could ever survive there. Ishua can't see past the trees blocking him, but the world tree feels wrong in a way he never expected, like this was only meant to be some make-believe mission, yet something real is happening out there. Then Julia blurts out what's going on, and Ishua confesses that he's felt something weird in his gut. Then he pushes closer, straight to the spot where Ishua swore he felt something weird in the air. He tells Julia to look because the artificial space is warping right in front of her eyes, and that twisted distortion is probably the reason the awful smell won't stop. But it was this wild, mind-blowing magical setup, so insane that Ishua could probably break it down piece by piece. After tearing open the space, he charged in with full force, and yep, that's how we reach the current time. Liliana still can't even wrap her mind around how Ishua pulled it off. Ishua is trying to crack a way into her fantasy world because even she can't fully dissect that power. And yeah, it's totally on brand for Ishua, the kind of monster who just keeps proving himself. Then he straight up asks, is that space really the girl's ability, which means the nasty smell from outside has nothing to do with it? Maybe she's got lightning reflexes because with a collapse that huge, she still manages to disarm the danger before it hits. Monster slams into them right then and there. And Ishua suddenly realizes, oh no, this isn't just any ogre king, it's a mutant species, and that awful smell is only going to get worse from here. Ishua taps into his power and charges them full force, right to the finish. And the girl suddenly realizes her magic is fully back, like it was never gone, and then they turn to Julia, demanding answers. How did Diana come back? She pushed herself to heal the girl, who woke up asking where Liliana was, and when Julia finally took in that pain relief, you could tell she was loving every second of it. Right then, the sword-wielding woman fired off a question, while Ishua burst into the scene like he'd been summoned. While Julia insists she can't get rid of that nasty smell she carried in from outside. Then Ishua scrubbed her clean and her whole body felt lighter, because those curses were tied to magic power, and only the opposing magic could neutralize it afterward. It was a weird workaround, but since magic bearers couldn't cast spells, we had to dig in, study everything, break down every attribute and combo, so we wouldn't end up stuck as some low-income nobody. Right then, he blasts through a monster like there's no tomorrow, giving it everything he's got. They pushed ahead until Liliana snapped into action, slamming those fireballs out of the air while that monster towered over everything. Man, everything that was happening in that moment was straight up mind-blowing. Even if they kept swinging, that monster wouldn't take a single hit, no damage at all. Then Liliana finally breaks the silence and says she's glad to meet Ishua one last time because that enemy is absolute and brutal, the kind they just can't beat here. She can snag a little time for him so he'll finally stand there and feel proud, like the hero he truly is. Ishua finally clicks, of course, that was the heroine, Liliana, and even though he wanted to throw himself into the sacrifice, he can't help thinking, heroes just aren't built the same. Ishua suddenly rises, snapping, I misunderstood everything, and yeah, this feels like a brutal opponent, but she's not facing something unbeatable. Then Ishua darts in front of the girl and demands Julia do the exact same thing as always. Meanwhile, Ishua slams his power into the whole group, sharpening every blade, healing everyone back to full strength, and even stacking extra effects on their bodies. Then he grins and tells them, I'll foot the entire bill for your magic power so you can use it without limits. Julia's going to crank up her healing even more and maybe unlock extra magic for them too, so don't you dare get caught by an instant death attack because they're basically untouchable, but if they keep feeding into that insane magic compulsion, something's bound to go wrong. An Ishua fires the command, everyone surges forward. Diana charges forward with everything she's got. Liliana couldn't even process it as the strike landed and sliced clean through the monster's belly. Then Julia roared back with her power, unleashing a full-force attack like she was throwing everything she had at it. That power was ridiculously over the top, and it still only left a tiny scratch on the monster, like the real brutal fight was only just getting started. Then Ishua finally clocks what's going on, and it hits him hard. Maybe some promoted mutant is about to reveal a whole class all on its own. And all they can do right now is follow Ishua's lead, just like he would. At that moment, Ishua grabbed the monster with both hands and heaved it up with everything he had. Then the crowd snapped, asking what he was doing. Mana attributes surged and climbed higher and higher, while they tried to wrap their heads around how he could beat an enemy who'd leveled up by absorbing that foul smell from outside. Truth was simple, he'd already shown them the answer before. He'd have to wipe out every nasty smell and suck it all up. And it should go back to normal once the promotion settles down. He just needs to cut it off like nothing ever happened, and Diana will do it the second she sees how Ishua crushed the monster down to that state. Liliana, right on his heels, says they're done stretching this fight. And the blade she craves could slice through anything, and the world she builds can forge even the mightiest sword she can dream up. Ishua calls that raw power the mark of a true hero. Then Diana goes all in, she slashes with everything she's got, and the monster gets cut cleanly in half. After a long rest, they headed back down, gripping hands like they meant it. He kept thanking everything that had happened back then, because once again, that little girl was the one he'd told Ishua about. Then Diana leans in and tells Liliana to seriously thank them right there and admits, oh, and by the way, my name is Liliana. And Ishua tells Allan's group he met her at the castle when she got invited, and he can't wrap his mind around the fact she's actually a heroine. Then Liliana lights up because Ishua finally recognizes her. Maybe she's even shyer than Julia, but once that awful smell was gone, they couldn't help but wonder how close they were to the world tree. Right in those moments, they rushed back to the village like he was a hero, laid out everything that happened, and begged for answers, only to turn around and find something horrifying had already struck. A chunk of the world tree was gone, and that silence hit everyone like a warning. Worry spread everywhere. Staring at what was unfolding, they couldn't believe their eyes, so Liliana burst into a sprint and yelled at him to get to the village, like, right now. Ishua snaps into it. This is what a hero is supposed to be, because she can practically taste the clarity of danger. Then when she closes in on the guard, she realizes they're the very same faces from before. Liliana flashes her money card and claims she's come to check out the village area. Right then the guard grills her about whether they're truly from that moment, and Ishua jumps in, demanding, so what happened? The guard refuses to let them in, saying that before some stranger calling himself a hero showed up, he'd dealt with too many imposters, so now he's terrified they're just fakes. Then they barge in shouting that they're going to check out exactly what's going on. And the moment he rides through there, he can't even process it. How this whole village is getting crushed by one struggle after another, just like that. They were supposed to peek at what was happening back then, but as soon as they showed up and no one was watching, nobody could even make sense of it. And with that voice alone, Ishua instantly figures out exactly who it was. Allan was the one standing right there, front and center. A few days earlier, the king pulled Allan aside and told him, "Start apologizing from now on, because you're supposed to report everything that happened, but from the mouths of the people who left." Even though Allan still lived among the nobility, the king sent him a direct summons, demanding he rush back to the royal capital. Everyone expected that world to finally bow to its king and to see the talk around town for what it really was. Liliana, the heroine, she didn't just stand a chance, she tore through the odds and even beat one of the four kings standing right there, face to face. Right under the demon king, Allan should hand over something like that. Allan could only blurt out the truth, his level jumped up just a little. And yeah, he's not just clearing a high-class dungeon, he's conquering it, then sprinting on to even higher-class dungeons next. King snaps, "That's enough." And he's sick to death of hearing the same story every single day, so he snaps and demands to know where Ishua is, the one he loved to hear talk, repeating everything Ishua said like it was the last thing that mattered. The king couldn't wrap his head around why Ishua's name was even getting dragged into this, but if they looked around and found he was the only one left, he'd have zero clue what to say. Then Allan snaps that Ishua wasn't feeling well when he made that excuse, and the king immediately fires back, "So what happened?" Then Allan claims Julia is right there with him, says he's just taking a breather, and tells everyone not to panic, because next time he comes back, they've got to plan a strike mission that could actually deliver results. And the king leans in and declares, "It's fine, no worries." Then he turns to Allan and orders him to do it, because he's got an urgent mission that he needs to hash out with Ishua, no delays. Just as everything hit that exact moment, Ishua burst up to the Tree of Life, because the second he saw it, he realized the tree was way, way bigger than he'd ever imagined. Allan had heard whispers that some monsters got promoted and showed up here, but he'd never actually run into one until now, so he grabbed the driver's attention and asked straight up if those monsters really existed around here. The driver nodded and said, "Yeah, and we've already gotten things from them." Then he leaned in and added that this place was sealed off tight right then. Totally clueless, Liliana still pulled off her mission right beside that exact moment. While Allan can't wrap his head around why he showed up right then, the driver swears he saw it clearly. That girl was noble, unbreakable, and stunning. Allan suddenly realizes he needs to be popular, so no matter what's going on, he'll track down the little girl and that female swordswoman who looks like a gorilla, pin down the real cause of all those phaser-fueled problems, and then, after that. Those nasty monster rumors were pure nonsense, so he figured it'd be a total cakewalk because luck was finally swinging back his way. And that's why he can charge back without a single problem. Then he finally reaches the village, marches straight up to the guard, and tells him, clear as day, that everything went off without a single problem. The guard can't wrap his head around it. There's a human in front of him, insisting nobody gets in without his permission. Allan claims he showed up there because of Liliana, then shoots the question, was she inside, and flashes his hero card, saying he came to investigate on the king's command. The guard can't wrap his head around why the hero is alone, or even if something like that is real at all, but before he can argue, more elves show up and say they'll let him in. There was Chelsea, the elf queen, and Allan's eyes lingered on her like, wow, she's ridiculously cute, but right then, they couldn't really pick anything else. No answers showed up, time was running out, and the elves finally had to team up with the humans. So the queen calls Allan in and tells him to spill everything, but warns him if things ever spiral into a world-level threat, she needs one extra request: don't say a single strange thing. Allan demands to know what's going on, and pushes to find out exactly what he's allowed to handle. After the king's words hit him again, he finally steps in full force and announces that he'll let the story play out first. If that situation turns sour, he just bolts out, no hesitation, no looking back. After watching every citizen around him struggle through hard times, completely panicked and lost, Allan steps into a nightmare of a situation, terrified of what might happen next, wondering if it's really this bad. Where Liliana and did other heroes show up before him? And the queen cuts in, saying he's the only human who entered the village recently. Even with those limits, Liliana wasn't there, so he had to stop and see her first. Then it hits him like the words of that old man just snapped into place, right alongside Liliana, the heroine, and every miracle she ever pulled off. But she insists this is his asterisk shot. He just has to crack the mystery solo, and then the king will finally take notice and right when they reach the place. Ishua was practically breathing down the Tree of Life's neck, spotting just how gigantic it was as you close in. When you approach, But he insists something's off, like nothing about this feels normal. The roots started to rot, and just like that, everything fell apart. The tree of life was rapidly dying, and that so-called purification wasn't doing a thing to save it. So the monsters kept turning up the cruelty, violence stacking on violence, and if it didn't stop right then, the whole region would spiral into chaos until nobody could live there anymore. The queen asks if he can pull off something, then tells them to craft a solid excuse and bolt, so Allan drops the truth, he's there to investigate. The moment he finally remembered everything the people had told him. The queen shoots her withering stare and demands to know what happened, like she can barely hold back the storm in her eyes. So she tells him take it, because he's the hero everyone counts on. After he declared he couldn't turn back, the only way to heal was to head straight back to the Tree of Life, so the queen demanded to know if there was anything they could do, and next thing you know, he's taking a long, close look. Allan had no choice but to stare at the tree, pure magic or not, it could still be cured in time. The queen even praises the hero as exactly as expected and insists they were only protecting the Tree of Life since it couldn't hold out. But Allan's mind keeps spinning, what were they even talking about? Because those words can't be right, even their specialized team couldn't cure that tree. So yeah, maybe a plain recovery spell wouldn't even touch that problem. He fires up Resurrect magic, bringing life back from the brink. It's a top-tier healing magic that could turn lives around, so powerful it might even outshine Julia, who doesn't know any of this, because it's a buried secret, and it's driving him with a vision of his own reality. And he stares down at the roots, and they're still totally rotten, no doubt about it. Queen snaps that this is nothing but a cruel joke, and that those beginner spells won't even stand a chance. Then Allan tells him, I already knew, this is just a setup, and he makes it clear the whole thing was loaded with that corruption, running in some twisted abnormal state. And he starts whipping out even more spells, one after another. People around him stared in confusion. Why was he calling himself a hero if this was what they had to expect? And if they let it slide, they'd be walking straight into disaster, because the miasma mixed with that magic power curse created an abnormal, dangerous mess. Then Allan snaps that if he doesn't bring results, everything's pointless, because he'll have nothing to tell the king. Then it hits him, something nasty is sprouting from the ground, growing wild like a secret stash of evil magic power. Realizing exactly what was going on, he tells her he's got other plans now, grabs his sword, and declares the farce is finally done, because now the hero's real power will be unleashed. The queen presses him, what were you even doing? And he snaps back that he'll end it once and for all. So he unleashes the hero's power and slices that whole place right down the middle. He got all fired up, and then the queen's patience snapped, demanding if he lost his own head. Allan swears he sliced through the center of that nasty power, and just like that, they can finally breathe and stay calm. But that evil power just keeps swelling, stronger and stronger every single moment. And he's stuck in disbelief because something feels horribly wrong, like he just can't figure out what's happening. It spread through the whole tree like a sickness, and he didn't even hesitate, he dropped to the ground. Knowing there was nothing left to save, the Tree of Life started to wither and die. And all those brutal damages to the tree weren't some accident, it was pure instinct, because that moment was their final shot to build any defense. He's totally lost, and right then they snap, what now, did you really cut our only hope? You gonna side with the Demon King? Allan shoots back, you've got it all wrong, we're misunderstanding everything. And he has absolutely no clue that he's clueless about everything. Right as he hears Ishua's voice crack through the air, who snaps his back turned on everything. Blurted out, why are you even here? Then they hit Allan with the question, did he do something to the Tree of Life? The guards finally admit he slashed every seal keeping the bad power locked away, then Ishua snaps, so, why was that kid doing all of this? The queen leans in, demanding to know who they were. Liliana bursts in and declares, I'm a heroine, staring at the queen like she recognizes her on sight, and sure, her title was granted by request, but she can't guard the Tree of Life. If she fails, she'll even lose her own village, so the queen mask can't stay on. Liliana steps up fast, snaps back that it's all a lie, and warns it's way too soon to lose her composure. Then Ishua steps up, presses his hand to the tree's bark, and strains to sense the soul living inside it. He claims it's still alive, then tells him, don't just stand there, try to cure it somehow, any way you can. The queen demands how anyone could pull off something like that, and one guard snaps back, don't even try to believe it, after what we just saw, we can't trust humans anymore. Liliana snaps that Ishua isn't some rookie adventurer, he's just a pathetic manabearer, nothing more. But Liliana, our heroine, swears she's got this, and she guarantees everything will turn out okay. because that guy would show up out of nowhere and steal the stage to save the entire world. Queen locks eyes with Ishua, and right away she sees the seriousness blazing in his. Then he barks at everyone to back off and let him handle the job. The queen rises and shouts that if this keeps going, the Tree of Life will die, so there's no point waiting, they have to act now, only they should take Allan. But once he's captured, Allan begs for help and everyone just brushes him off. Then Ishua realizes he's been handed a responsibility that's way bigger than he can ever handle. So he sets about caring for the whole tree, and sure enough, Ishua's magic power won't flow right through it, choked by the damage left behind from all those reckless mana calculations. And that power keeps surging, growing stronger by the second, so if anyone tries to shut down the Tree of Life, they'll drop dead first. That's why he has to fix the missing piece and trap every ounce of that ruthless power she forged. Right in the chaos, he summons a huge surge of magic power all at once. Guards demanded to know what was going on and how he twisted a magic circle like that. So he shoves his hand into the circle, believing he cooked up a way to warp the magic, powered by dark magic, and he realizes there's a huge gap in mana intensity and attributes because this denser magic is far stronger, and it was originally invented to steal power from monsters. Then he whips up several magic power holes and orders Liliana to plant matching magic circles everywhere the evil magic feels thick, since he can't see what's lurking up high. The moment Ishua calls her name, her heart starts pounding like crazy. After drawing that magic circle and sealing those key spots, the dark power got yanked right out, and now controlling her magic felt way easier than before. When they finally tore into every angle, they realized they'd stumbled on an insane method they'd never even heard of, and deep down, they knew it might actually work. The queen demands to know who Ishua is, and Ishua smirks, saying if she truly wants the answer, he's nothing more than a common monobar. Then he demands the heroine keep doing what she's meant to do right as the guard stomps in and snaps that this is wrong. The queen turns to him and asks what happened because they were actually starting to build hope. But then the guard blurts out that the whole village has been overrun by monsters. Something was wildly off, those monsters kept ramping up, getting stronger by the second. The Tree of Life's purification was almost finished until the monsters started getting even more native to it, and Anishua warned that if he stopped now, the Tree of Life would lose everything. Liliana and he couldn't handle all that chaos, and right then Diana blurted out that she was happy. But she couldn't shake the fear that the group would just hang around, staring at those things instead of doing anything. Now the path opens, and while everyone moves forward, Ishua rushes up and apologizes to the two, promising that the Tree of Life can finally be healed and the monsters can be made weaker, so they've got to keep them pinned down before anything goes wrong. Diana pushes it forward from that moment, let S not leave the gate open so anyone can slip in. So now, with Julia at his side, they finally get to team up for the very first time. It has to be flawless because those monsters that spill out of the forest are already manageable if the village archers just handle them. The rest that showed up on that street was coming right alongside them. After landing blow after blow on monsters with insane, Diana finally clicks Julia's sheer firepower is insane, and it all makes sense now that she's Ishua's partner, and yeah, it hits the same way, Diana has to admit it, Julia is a saint. Right in the middle of all that chaos, the villagers dumped every last mana potion they had into the fight, but it still felt like it wasn't going to be enough, and they burned through every option they had, while even Julia poured her own power into Diana's body. To test whether she could really handle it, but they had to push forward anyway. And right then, he hacked down wave after wave of monsters, piling them up as he went. Charging ahead with a storm of spells, the archers threw themselves forward, and just like the heroine's crew always does, the power was absolutely unreal. But yeah, maybe they just couldn't keep all that packed in. While all that chaos raged on, Ishua and Liliana fought like hell to snatch every last drop of dark power hiding in that tree. And Ishua leans in and begs the girls to push a little harder. And that's exactly what they kept doing until Diana got hit and Julia would rocket in fast, sprinting to heal her. And so they could tear right back into the fight, right after the last mana potion finally ran dry. More and more, monsters and raw magic power were scaling the very walls they were never meant to reach. Then they hold their breath and wait for the Tree of Life to heal and rise again. Meanwhile, the queen catches the report that the enemy has slipped in through the fence, slow and still struggling. With the village on the edge of collapse, she immediately snaps into action and demands to know what's happening with the evacuation of her citizens. They finally started pushing through, but every step was brutal. Sure, the nasty stench began to fade, yet the monsters kept ramping up, getting stronger by the second. He needs to rush to that war and throw himself into the fight fast, and even the queen demands a mark on loan, so when Ishua finally notices, he realizes that mark has started vanishing. He realized he'd need just a little more time. Meanwhile, Diana gets an arrow buried in her thigh, and the pain is only getting worse by the second. Even Julia was burning through her last scraps of magic, and her healing powers were starting to run dry. When Diana looks ahead, her stomach drops. She can't stop fearing the monsters staring back at her. But when she glances around, she sees everyone going all out, throwing their full strength into the fight. And she snaps to it. This is the moment, and it's time to move forward. And so she lifts her blade, bracing for the grim chance that it might be her last stand. So they could finally go home and keep grinding harder and harder, turning every practice into a life that feels truly worth living. And he finally saw all of it unfolding right before his eyes. And right above those two, people drop out of the sky like the universe just ripped open a hole. Then he charges forward and starts mowing down every monster in sight. Diana blurts what's going on, but Julia already clocks exactly who it is. And right then, it was Maria and Marcella standing there, like the moment the story snapped into place. A few weeks back, Allan's crew tried to crush a top-tier dungeon and got shut down hard. Furious, he declared himself the renowned hero of that world for all that continent, and Maria and Marcella, they called it a disaster. And they just sit way out there, watching every single move they made from a distance. Just like that, they tore out of there. Then the two started plotting to head straight for the city where Ishua was, but just when they thought they were set, someone begged them for help. A pack of noble folks were getting torn apart by monsters on the attack. So the two made up their minds and took off after them, Maria insisting she needed to find a calmer place, while Marcella pushed for the city ASAP. And if it was Ishua involved, that definitely meant help was on the way. And after everything they'd been through, they finally craved peace, like they needed to breathe again. Marcella couldn't make sense of it, heading straight for that carriage. She begged to head straight for the city where Ishua was, but they ended up turning the other way because they couldn't just abandon those people, so they had to follow some normal plan first, then finally rush to Ishua's city. Marcella just couldn't make sense of it. At that exact moment, she was soaking in pure luxury like it belonged to her. He was stuffing himself on pure luxury. This place was lavish down to the last detail, and the food tasted like a king's dream. The gentleman fired off his thanks for everything, then said the two of them had saved his daughter's life. The medicine they clutched in their hands was the only thing that could save a little girl ravaged by a deadly disease. Then Marcella urged Maria to move, but the gentleman stopped them cold and told them to wait just a moment. And if they were going to work for him, he planned to forge them into absolute pros. So Marcella threw him a huge thanks for the job, but he told her they had to keep adventuring, not just orbiting some noble. So the noble begged them to stay just one more night. He couldn't face his ancestors, and that's how the person who saved his daughter's life finally got to walk away, one moment at a time. And that's exactly what he was spilling, word for word, like it mattered most. And Marcella couldn't wrap her head around it at all. They kept begging them to stay one more night again and again, and by that moment they'd already been there for a full week. Marcella and Maria finally snapped and pushed to head into the city. It looked like Ishua was starting to move. And just like that, they're sent off, and the gentleman tells them, "Come to my territory whenever you get the chance." Now the waiting's over because it's finally time to head straight to Ishua. Marcella just can't make sense of it. He stormed into the Adventurers Guild reception, only to find Ishua nowhere in sight, and the tension instantly drained as they kicked back and relaxed. Seriously, they headed straight to the elf village to grab a special guild request in person, so they pushed on with everything they had, sprinting full speed to get inside, all while anxiety gnawed at their hearts. Marcella admits she was dying to chase after Ishua, but the king's orders left them no choice, so they had to keep moving, no matter how badly they wanted to turn their backs. Maria asks if Ishua's been buried in all those leftover requests, and yeah, that's exactly what's going on. So then, while Ishua and the others are away, these two will deliver that request. So they were busy handling all the other threats too, jumping in to deal with monsters left and right. Chasing dogs, then finding more, lugging heavy loads, and stepping in to help the kids. Then they fire off anything else, and right then, a stack of missions is already getting reported. And they'd better follow. Marcella couldn't wrap her head around it. A giant bird was swooping them up and carrying them off. And right in that instant, Marcella blurted out a question right to him. Maria directly. But her eyelids started drooping, like sleep was already stealing her away. Maria demands to know what happened, only to realize she's been sleeping like crazy. They were out on a mission to gather herbs when bam, a bird swooped in and attacked both of them. And after that, it carried her straight to the nest. And that's how they'd end up as a snack for the giant chicken. Maria definitely didn't want to wake up feeling like that, and that mindset would push them toward escape, but that bird, it would. I'm taking them straight to the elf village. Where Ishua would have been right then, and they'd finally roll in with that bird. Maybe there was no way around it after all. All right, there was definitely something off because that bird was massive, like bigger than the tree it was perched on. But Marcella snaps none of that matters, because once the tree of life is totally gone, she drags them to the next place. Spotted those two and immediately dove in to help. Then Maria sprinted in and started carving the monster apart. She wiped every single one out in one unstoppable move. Marcella wasn't just standing there, she hurled her spells into the chaos too. Julia finally runs into the two again. It's been ages, but they still act like she's nothing short of incredible. Right then, Marcella shoves a potion pot into Julia's hands, and Julia gulps it down before anyone can blink. Now, after wiping out those monsters, they finally got to move on. Maria grabs the moment and asks, "Wait, who's the girl beside me?" because her sword skills are way too good to ignore. Then just when things look bleak, another person suddenly shows up and jumps in to help. Liliana lunged in, right as an attack was thrown her way. Marcella and Maria, new faces as Liliana and Maria, finally realized the truth. She was one of the girls who already took down one of the four kings before the Demon King even got his chance. Once they shut down every last mana hole, Ishua went straight to the center to wipe out the remaining corruption, because the worst of it was still waiting and they had a little more pain to endure. And now the five of them are finally free to go all out in a real fight. Meanwhile, Ishua was right there, handling the whole chaos head-on. Liliana danced with everything she had, like the music owned her whole soul, stitching up every last mana hole. Queen and everyone stared in shock as they finally noticed the leaves slowing down, then slowly drifting down to the ground. Right then, Ishua snaps that things feel a little short, now they can take it all the way, and he orders Liliana to sprint and back up the other girls. Now he finally could shut down what was going wrong and get the function flowing again. The mages stumble into a dead end, shocked to find out Ishua was hunting something huge, those magic circles, and somehow he still shoves an insane amount of magic power straight into the Tree of Life. That pile of magic power is insane, way beyond what the elves got, and there's something even bigger he's about to reveal. If he lets it all flood in and charge up for that moment, he'll unleash so much energy into the Tree of Life's points that the leaves might start flying free. His name was Ishua, pure mystery wrapped in a good heart, weird as it gets but always kind. Ishua clocks it, he's starting to sync up, and if he just pushes a little longer, he'll make it. Meanwhile, the mages froze, those leaves had already stopped moving, and they didn't just stop, they were completely still. The whole place surged with life, like the Tree of Life was healing at full speed and snapping back into complete power. And just like that, he snapped back to life fast. Queen erupted into tears, swearing she could smell life stirring from the Tree of Life. And with that, the other girls threw everything they had at those monsters, fighting tooth and nail, shattering every obstacle for good. And just like that, every last trace of magic power vanished completely. The leaves finally stopped falling like the storm had backed off, so purification went back to normal and they just had to grit their teeth for a little longer until they noticed the monsters had stopped walking, and that's when it hit them. They scared them out of their minds, then they spun around staring like, wait, what just happened? The monsters were finally backing off because the purification function had roared back to life. Fate snapped into place and the monsters folded instantly. Because of that, they had one mission: find a way out and save themselves, plain and simple. And once they managed to hold off everything they could, they finally rushed headfirst into what was happening next. Queen tried to get Isha's attention, but she couldn't find the right words for her gratitude, yet Isha says that he's not done yet, so he lifts both hands, flings open a glowing magic circle, and hurls the spell in with everything he's got. They carved it into the air, sealing every bit of the tree in place like a locked fortress. Queen leans in and demands, so what's that circuit for? It's basically a small, punchy setup that sets the whole thing in motion. They thought the magic power tribute was nothing but a simple purification function until it hit over capacity. The Queen even thanks him, and just when he thinks he's safe, Julia storms in and starts yelling about the problem. Then she squeezes Ishua in the biggest hug like she's pouring out her whole heart, and Ishua ends up thanking Diana and Liliana over and over. And he whips his eyes to the side. And then it hits him, Maria and Marcella are standing right there. So seeing Ishua again lights them up, and after they squeeze each other in a tight hug and admit they missed him, Ishua lets slip that he never expected them to help. But it was clearly something special, pure secrecy, and then, out of pure coincidence, a bird guided them right to it, and everyone knew the destination was supposed to stay hidden until the queen finally steps in and calls for manabearer Ishua, saying he's the real savior who rescued lives, starting with his. Somehow the girls were in it too. It was one wild, unstoppable crowd. Actually, they weren't even a real group yet, they were just meeting and syncing up in that exact moment, and somehow it looked flawless. The crazy part is they'd been teaming up for years, and they didn't just pull it off for themselves. The whole village and the entire region got saved, which is why that night was. They got the full festival experience too, like the whole town went all out just for them. Praise the saviors and haul ingredients from everywhere to brew the finest sake that everyone can share. After digging through mountains of answers, Ishua finally found his way to the queen, talking to her face to face. Who says even a hero can handle something like that? She's still thrilled the tree of life turned out that way, like it was a dream all over again, until they finally realized the queen of the village, the guardian of that world, can be taken down fast, and yet she's now bearing that massive weight on her shoulders. The queen drops to her knees and tells him to call anytime if she needs his help. She swears he'll be there. Ishua then makes her lift her head, urges her to enjoy festivals like this, and says that's all he needs. The queen's mood flips in an instant. She breaks into cheers, glowing with pure joy. But someone was celebrating way too hard, like they knew they'd gotten away with something. And then Ishua's eyes snap to it, Julia. She's been chugging way more than she should, swearing she won't sleep enough tonight. Ishua finally dropped his guard, and that's when he realized she could outdrink anyone. Then she blurts that the saint can wipe out all the darkness because she's invisible right while she's drunk, before stumbling up to Yeshua and insisting there's something bigger they need, a drink together. The moment he glanced back, he heard someone laughing. He finally clocks that it was Liliana admitting her feelings can't reach Ishua, and then he shoots back, so what the hell is happening? Then she flat out declares that a weak heroine like her is probably hated anyway. Then she takes off into the sky, and suddenly everything spirals into something even more terrifying and messy. As Ishua whips his gaze to the side, he spots Diana standing right there. They lock eyes for a second and it hits them, everything clicks at once. But they were stuck wrestling the same twisted, mind-bending mess. Then Diana rockets after Liliana, and Ishua jumps in to watch over Julia. Next morning, he finally notices it. Everything's already gone calm. Allan was the one trapped, and he begged everyone, don't you dare joke with him like that, because that kind of treatment is downright cruel for a hero like him. Ishua gets completely rattled, and the guards snap back that they'll never unleash a hero, because he's the demon who tried to tear their village apart. They had to put him in a cage like this, because the moment things went wrong, he'd just break his own leg or pull some other disaster like that. Right then, Ishua blurted out that he'd spill the whole truth to the king, and that he was done running because no more escapes could save him. Right in the middle of all that chaos, they could still slam the brakes and stop in the city before they even reached the royal capital. Meanwhile, the queen lights up and says she's thrilled they're finally back, and Ishua jumps in to thank her for the festival, calling it absolutely stunning. So yeah, it was everyone's turn to go back to where they belonged. Meanwhile, they tore back toward the village where Ishua was waiting. Ilias, the receptionist, can't stop himself. He throws Ishua a huge thanks for coming back, insisting, I'm totally fine. Somehow, he pulled everyone back together right when Elf Village was getting messy, and even the receptionist was panicking over how hard to apologize for the trouble. Ishua reassured her, said that from what he'd seen everything had stayed calm, and immediately pushed to report the mission as fast as he could. Then the receptionist stared in disbelief as the monsters turned nastier by the second, because the tree of life was breaking down fast. And because of that win, they didn't just smash a subspecies of the Ogre King, he got promoted into a higher classification, and they breathed new life into the tree of life itself. The receptionist demands who Ishua is, and he smirks back, ask who he really is. He's not some legendary hero, he's just a regular manabearer. Even with every girl behind him refusing that idea, the receptionist asks if he was only meant to make a simple request to show gratitude, but he refuses to let it slide without bumping the reward. Shawa insists he needs nothing fancy, because those 30 promised gold coins are already way more than enough. The receptionist leans in and says someone every bit as good as him is about to show up, and the results will be heroic. Julia can't help thinking that means he won't feel like he should do anything big, and that's honestly kind of scary. But then all this. Your request went through like lightning, and Liliana even looked like she might slip in and claim her mission reward too. And now Liliana finally let Ishua's magic shine, then they teamed up because even the receptionist was begging to witness it. Meanwhile, someone from outside pounds on the door and begs to be left behind, like that would somehow make things fair. Hero was right there, standing in the spotlight, ready for whatever came next. Allan steps in like he's got a whole tangled plan. His companions, his group, and even his rewards are what he claims he's handling, and the other adventurers are already clued in, staring at him like, "Wait, who are you?" Ishua snaps back that he's been banished already, swears there's no issue, and admits he even nearly wrecked the Tree of Life because he wasn't trying to spark a war with those people. Ishua admits he should have just stayed outside the city and waited there, because now he can't shake the misery knowing he nearly abandoned the people behind in that fancy high-class dungeon. Ishua, seriously, if they could just make it to the royal capital, they'd be set. And then spill every last detail to the king. Then he finally squares up with the king of the royal capital and spills every last detail about what's been going on. At that exact moment, the king declared, "I already knew what was going on," pointing to an emissary sent straight from the queen, yet he still couldn't wrap his head around why Allan didn't go alone and somehow made everything explode even more. And when Allan finally tries to speak up, the king shuts him down once and for all, then turns to Ishua and asks, "Is it true?" Ishua answers, "Yes." Allan had said the group didn't need a member who just provides magic power, and that was brutal. The sacred sword is a hero's rare gift, but everything about how the group was set up, that success was really all thanks to Ishua. Then Maria snaps and says Allan lied to her, claiming Ishua left on his own, while Allan pushed them to storm a high-class dungeon. And right then, Marcella warns that the danger is everywhere. Things spiral even harder, and finally Allan decides to ditch the two and slip out, hunting any path to escape. So the only one left alone in that moment was the guy who begged him to investigate the Tree of Life, and yeah, Allan lied to the king, and that was a disaster. As soon as Allan opened his mouth to say something, it was already way too late. King wastes no time, he's already decided to strip the hero title away. Allan shoots up and pleads for just a little more time, then promises he'll be right back and turns to Ishua to tell him to head back to the group too, so everyone's covered. They finally start together, then it's dead silent until Julia stands up and says that it was pretty much fine, yet if he truly thinks becoming a hero is the move, then he should go back and sharpen his sword as an incredible adventurer first. Her saintly smile never budged, and somehow it left everyone feeling uneasy. Allan tells Julia that if she really means he should kick things off from square one as an adventurer, then they're starting over right now. But the king slams it all down, insisting it was nothing but a misunderstanding, claiming Allan got kicked out of the hero spot because his performance never improved, that he sparked a brutal crisis between the continents, and that he tried to tip everything over, forcing obligation through the whole fiasco. Worse, he supposedly fed the king false records, and that kind of deception is a serious crime. And once they slap that criminal label on him, he can't outrun it, he's stuck carrying it for good. Allan demands to know why they're calling him a criminal. And that whole scene was beyond ridiculous as guards dragged him away. Meanwhile, the king shuts the formalities down and decides to confront Ishua face to face. "I'm telling you, handling that mess felt amazing, like every horrible thing that's happened to him finally paid off, and if he wants something, he should just ask." Ishua, though, he shuts it down. No need for a whole speech, he's already gotten his rewards straight from the guild. Then the king leans in and offers him anything, some domain, some fancy title, and even pitches a brilliant idea, but Ishua can't bring himself to picture a life as some aristocrat. Julia blurts out that it's incredible, something truly extraordinary, like he can just accept it without question. Ishua thanks him and goes, "Yeah, I get it," and simply accepts it. But the girls are totally lost, like they can't even begin to grasp what's happening. Ishua admits it was an honor, but then shrugs it off, saying they're just adventurers and he can't stop climbing higher and higher. And right then, riding along that road with Julia, everyone turned his life into pure, non-stop fun. The king breaks into a smile and says he gets it, then turns to the adventurer Ishua and starts talking, as he throws his best wishes at him right then. Meanwhile, Diana corners Liliana and demands to know what she'll do next, if she's really planning to travel with just the two of them again. Or maybe she'll finally team up with Ishua. This is their shot to fight side by side just like they've always wanted. Liliana gets it, and with that in mind, she takes the risk and steps forward. Right then, Maria and Marcella come storming in, shouting at the top of their lungs. They blurted out that they wanted to join Ishawa's crew. Liliana stumbled into the wrong streets, totally lost. Right then, Ishua bursts out that the two of them might be in serious demand, and if they want to tag along, Maria immediately steps up, calling Ishua incredible and insisting that with him, they could end up etched into history. And yeah, that whole pitch sounds both wild and carefully planned. Ishua insists they're not exaggerating and swears he'd love nothing more than to have both of them in the group. Then Diana turns to Liliana and declares, "It's your time." Right then, the little girl fought to get the words out. Then he leans in and straight up asks if she can join his crew. Then right after the world goes dead silent, Diana suddenly realizes that the way she said it sounded exactly like some little girl begging to play pretend. Ishua leans in, asks her if she's in, and tells her he's heard her legend. She even took down one of the 4 kings just to reach the Demon King straight, and then he asks if she's really that strong, can he bring as many members as he wants. Diana couldn't make sense of what Ishul was talking about, because deep down, she was certain that while she was still in the village, he was way stronger, and getting those truly talented guys through that door was anything but easy. Ishua snaps his head back and Julia blurts out that Liliana is pure strength, an incredible heroine, nothing like the others. Every bit of health just lines up and agrees. Ishua leans in and says he gets it, he truly understands. So they all agreed Liliana and the heroine herself would join the group, and everybody would head in together. Liliana spun around, totally lost, and blurted, "Wait, didn't I mean the opposite? I was trying to get into Isua's group." But Ishua insists there's no such thing as a true hero in the group. Someone has to be the leader, period, and it's only natural. So when Liliana gets turned around and asks Diana what to do, she's basically just following Ishua's rule. So I just let it be like that. Manabearer Ishua, Saint Julia Maria, the magical swordswoman. Marcella, the beloved plus holy swordswoman Diana, and the heroine Liliana. A whole new squad of heroes just got formed, and the story instantly turned up to max. And now they finally fall into step. While the Demon King's castle is going wild, the 4 demons are in a heated meeting, one of them getting reborn and pushing for the front to be pushed harder. Then one demon queen snaps that the other's brain must be made of pure muscle, says the hero already has him, but they're still debating whether they can pull him back and keep moving like it wasn't a loss, and they realize, right there, they can't be perfect. Meanwhile, another demon blurted out that the Tree of Life was piled with an absurd amount of evil magic, so much power it only kept getting stronger, and once the monsters struck the village, all that chaos became the perfect blueprint for future invasions. Honestly, a pretty brutal strategy. Then the last one confides that he's got a gut feeling about the Ogre King, but he's still sure he'll be fine until a tiny hero smashes him and leaves him defeated. It felt downright like cheating. He wiped out every trace of miasma and snapped back to normal, then left everyone stunned with how he even slipped past the hero's barrier and still managed to strip away the ornament on the Tree of Life. So they decide to march straight up to the Demon King and ask the one question, can a human actually do something like that? They push to speak with the Demon King, claiming his spell power was fusing with her insane control power he swore was monstrous, and they're convinced that's exactly why Liliana joined him, and that was a nightmare just waiting to explode. The demons finally snapped into reality. They couldn't handle this anymore and they begged him to pull over, but the moment they kept talking about it, it only took a little time for everything to click and make sense. They demand to know what's going on. Then the Demon King cuts in, "You've been trading hits more than you've been blocking, so why waste strength right now?" And the enemy turns out to be a squad of heroes, humans included, so he demands they stay sharp and fight with caution. They needed a hero who could actually work with them, and right then the Demon King stepped forward and declared he was ready to team up with the demons. When the Demon King snaps his fingers, Allan's face flashed on screen, pure irritation burning in him after landing that criminal mark. And then he snaps that it's not just bad luck, it's directly his fault, because everything that went down points to him. Demon King declares this proves a fallen hero can still choose to stand with them. Just as Ishua settled into his carriage, someone suddenly burst in and started calling his name, yanking his focus instantly. They finally hit the territory they'd been talking about right when Ishua leans in and tells Liliana, "We're already in the same group, so she doesn't have to act so formal with him." And just like that, he snaps Marcella and Maria's attention and asks, "So, you don't want to keep playing it so formal anymore, right?" A whole week had passed since they forged this new crew, and now, on their very first mission, they were racing to haul an elixir straight into the main territory. Then Ishua dials Marcella and Maria and tells them, "You two already met the lord of the territory we're heading to." Right after Allan pulled them out on the road to the city where Ishua was headed, they rushed in to help a carriage packed with potions. Right in the middle of all that chaos, they screeched to a halt at the mansion of that territory. When they finally arrived, they were hit with a horrifying sight, people writhing under diseases no one even knew about yet. And it was still just the start, because when they showed up, it was only the local chief's daughter there. Ishua steadied himself, understood what was happening, and said they had to move fast, then snapped his attention to Diana, who's outside knocking and calling out, asking if she can finally see the mansion. Diana shoots back, "Yeah, yes." And right after that, it was there, right in their faces. When he finally steps in, the old man instantly senses everyone. He's stunned. He didn't think the girls would be back this fast, and Maria even tells him his daughter looks like she's doing great. But the truth is, she's back to needing a whole mountain of healing potions. Then the gentleman snaps that a bizarre plague has swept through the whole territory, and the doctors are staring at a blank wall. No one can find the cause, but one high-class potion is the only thing that actually saves people from the fatal sickness. That's why the herb-collecting missions started ramping up. Now they'd grab more herbs from the neighboring territories and even swing back to deliver them again, while the gentleman took care of all the upkeep until Liliana warned him that there's a limit only medicine can reach. Ishua blurts out, "Wait, what's going on here?" Liliana blurts out that she can't let that mysterious disease mystery stay unsolved. She wants to dive into it right away. And when they finally turned back, Liliana blurted out an apology, because the mission was only meant for them to deliver the potions, but somehow she couldn't resist, and she started chasing answers herself. Ishua grins and tells them they'll track down the cause while delivering a potion to every territory in the village, because the request is already done, so this ride won't stop to investigate for even a second. But Ishua insists that a real heroine was always supposed to handle it. She just refuses to finish the mission. Still, Ishua trusts Liliana's judgment. The girl's face instantly burns red with full-on embarrassment. It tells her to drop the formal act right there, but Julia can't do it, no matter how hard she tries, so she finally pushes back, asking why she even wanted to investigate in the first place if there's something she's not taking even a little seriously. And when she finally crushed one of the Demon Kings, he begged her to remember it, because a darker scheme was brewing, and he wanted her to know he was praying humans would stop it. Liliana leaned in and demanded the demon tell her exactly what it was. Then he spilled the plan, let it unfold over time, weaken the tree of life, and pave the way for wave after wave of attacks to crash into the village, and just like that, the demon began to back away. Right then, he spilled everything to Ishua, who just sat there thinking, and that whole group, clueless about it already being handled, started asking if this could be a piece of some sinister master plan. Then the carriage driver shows up, calling out that they've hit the first stop, so they tumble out right away and grab the potions. The driver shakes his head and mutters that those people are straight up strange. The driver snaps that he doesn't have to sprint to fix anything. He can just pick missions and keep delivering non-stop. But once you see the cash those jobs pay, they've got no choice but to take them, and Maria even calls it smart. Yet Ishua shoots back that her boss is clearly clueless when it comes to stuff like that. And she's not just human, she's something beyond natural, and that's why it's incredibly impressive. So after everything, Ishua finally decides to hand out the medicine himself, and then he digs into the real reason behind all this chaos. Then a gentleman leads them and brags that he's got plenty of patience in a simple place, and admits they can't even manage to walk. Staring straight at everything those people were going through. Everyone freezes in shock, completely blindsided by what's happening right in front of them. The whole crowd of patients got tossed into one house. And it was just like the other locations. About 100 people were packed in there right then, because nobody knew what caused it, and they had no idea how to stop the disease or how to help the poor victim recover on their own. Yeah, that potion they were hauling actually hits, like it works, no doubt about it, but the medicines they're delivering still won't reach everyone. Ishua is totally out of his depth, yet he has to copy Liliana and find something only he can do here, so he decides to dig into the patient's condition. The gentleman waved it off, scoffing that no one's getting help from some hero who took down one of the 4 demon kings, or a manabearer who saved the tree of life. Then Ishua stepped in and introduced himself, insisting he only needed to get a little close to the man's forehead. Even if it's totally outside Ishua's usual world, if the Demon King's word is real, then somehow he's always able to sniff out something. Then he smashes a surge of power onto the gentleman's head, and the man can't even figure out what's happening, until Yeshua steps in and says the magic power inside his balance is thrown off, and that's why he's been getting sicker and sicker. The gentleman demands to know what that magic power balance even meant, and Ishua snaps back that they were running way too short on dark magic. And that's exactly why all this stuff in the middle would only drag everything into an even bigger mess. Because every creature is packed with magic power so evenly across all attributes that the balance is basically perfect. So Ishua was sealing the status of someone's magic power balance with a single touch, and it hits him hard. Could he tweak that balance and control it? It packed a little extra power. He somehow slips the fix into place on the kid, and from there he keeps getting stronger and stronger. The boy's mother is overjoyed that her son's finally okay, and the gentleman can't help but wonder, was that potion they're carrying just leveling out the magic inside his body, matching it to whatever symptoms were throwing things off? That's why it all comes down to the same symptoms, and Ishua steps in like a pro, watching the gentleman spiral in panic, shocked that Ishua keeps checking his magic power balance again and again, then even slots the magic power into fists with the right attributes to help people who really need it. Ishua goes one by one, and while he's at it, Julia can't stay idle. She jumps in too, tossing healing spells to give the clinic a little backup. That gentleman still couldn't wrap his head around it, how that girl dared to flood the whole place with healing magic, how Ishua wasn't the only freakishly incredible one there, and how the entire group had jaw-dropping power, while Marcella insisted she had to start preparing a magic potion for everyone. Liliana insisted it wasn't only the disease, it was the missing dark magic power too, and that's when curiosity finally started to light a fire in her. If the culprit really was magic power, then they could do something about it, so once they decided, they fanned out and kept watch around the village for anything weird. At the same time, Diana and Maria went straight to the villagers and demanded to know if anything was happening. Then Ishua watches everyone stride off, shaking his head and saying, of course they'd push themselves, this is exactly what anyone should do when it matters. The second Ishua realizes he can't hold back anymore, he immediately digs in and gives it everything he's got. Time kept marching, and soon everyone was popping their meds on schedule. The gentleman finally clocked Ishua standing there, wiped out and exhausted, and he blurted, "Are you okay? What's wrong?" because the look on Ishua's face screamed trouble. But Ishua insisted they rest, yet somehow everyone jumped up anyway, ready to help as soon as they woke. Julia said, of course it's Ishua, this is exactly the kind of thing he'd do. Then Ishua flashed a grin and replied, and it's thanks to you too, Julia, I'd never keep that healing magic at this level without your power. So the gentlemen are stunned, calling it a miracle they can't even wrap their heads around, because how could something like that be happening? And if you think Ishua just saved the Tree of Life, you're missing the best part. He also saved the whole village, and that's what would crown him as the new emperor of history. Ishua snaps that it was all blown out of proportion, and that he didn't save the Tree of Life alone. Meanwhile, Liliana closes in and Ishua snaps what happened. And she blurts out that she's uncovered something huge, something absolutely vital. Right then the crowd erupts, people swear those two can't be stopped. They said the real leader was Liliana, not him, and claimed every single member had everything nailed down perfectly. And even as chaos erupted, the crowd kept screaming for Ishua. They shout for everyone to calm down, while out beyond the village walls. Some people were already waiting, ready to unleash the attack on that village. Then they whip around and stare at the guy standing right behind, grilling him like, so is this your first job or are you just full of excuses? He hawked those medicines in that village, because a nasty disease was spreading and people were desperate. At the start, Allan blurts out that every single one of those healing medicines is fake and packed with way stronger, not-so-human power. They burst into laughter, straight up telling him it was time to finally accept the truth, that he's a criminal. From this point on, Allan has only one way to survive, turn into a criminal, because there's no other life left for him. Just a few days after Allan got stripped of his hero status, he stormed into the novice city, and the receptionist was so shocked she couldn't even process a word he said. Yet he can't even land a low-class mission. He only hands off those missions to people with something criminal in their name. Allan snapped with irritation and stormed out of the city, blaming his mark for shutting down every decent mission, and flat out pinning it all on Isha for everything that went down. Right then, he can't even cough up enough to sleep for the night when the man closes in and tells him he must be having one hell of a hard time. Allan blurts out, "So who is that guy?" But he just shrugs it off, saying he didn't want to be rude and that they had come with a mission for the hero Allan. Allan fires back, "What's going on?" And he can't stop wondering, are those guys tied to some criminal guild? At first, Allan refuses to admit he doesn't want to join a criminal guild. Then they hit him with a deal. They'll hand him exactly what he needs. And if he ever needed coin, meat, or food, those missions would likely land it right in his hands. Allan bites his restraint for now, then drops the line. He'll see what happens after he checks first, then he'll decide whether to accept or shut it down. So yeah, he must have agreed, because right then he was shoveling down every last bite of food. The criminals demanded to know why he was eating inside the carriage, but Allan snapped back and stormed out, telling them to shut up, because he wasn't even hungry, and he wasn't about to go swinging at something like that. Then Allan blurts out that he never imagined he'd be ending his life under the shadow of a criminal's guilt, and if that reward is real, then yeah, this is probably his first step, because now he has to plan the next move fast. Then Allan snapped, "What are you hauling?" The criminal smirked and claimed it was medicine meant to treat a strange disease crawling through the neighboring territory, then pitched, "We'll sell it and rake in the cash." Allan pressed, "So you're telling me that's legitimate?" The criminals demand proof it's legit, and the guy snaps back, "This medicine is the Phoenix pill, and the moment you take it, it hits insanely hard. Migraines, wild side effects, hallucinations, even moments that look like possession, all of it treated as a serious crime in the kingdom." Drug transport was illegal, no doubt about it, a straight-up crime, but Allan swore he'd leave because he refused to stand for that kind of garbage. But the criminals start needling him, calling him stupid, saying he's already stuffed himself, and even bragging that he's heard about the plan, so if he can slip out of this fight and save his own skin, maybe he'll make it. Then Allan gets paralyzed and the criminals grin, telling him not to stress. When those hours hit, they'll already be halfway to the next village, safe and unseen, so nobody can ever swear they remember their faces, and the clueless villagers will even clap for them like they're heroes. Those guys were the absolute dregs for Allan. Maybe he was trying to match them. Then they start dropping the boxes on the ground. So they kick things off in a starving village, and that right there is Allan's first mission. And Allan snapped on a mask. They marched up to a gentleman and blurted out, "We've got the cure, new medicine, straight from the royal capital." The gentleman watched them and Allan pressed, "So this is what's been happening, you're saying it's a real disease?" Confused, the gentleman asked if an incredible doctor was coming directly from the royal capital, since they'd been scrambling just to transport everything all the way here. Then they finally offered their hospitality and brought the whole thing in so the doctor could arrive. Allan can't wrap his head around how everyone bought it. But then the moment he looks up, he's stunned. There are tons of people gathered there. He didn't fully get it, but something felt horribly wrong, because he kept hearing voices outside, people thanking him like crazy for all the help, and somehow the same hero crew that came to the village was showing up there all the time. And just like that, everyone's spirits finally shot up. Everything was looking way better for once. No matter what chaos erupted, Ishua was always right there in the middle of it, ready to grab every last ounce of the credit and make it impossible to ignore. But only for himself, like those two spots that were meant to belong to Ishua alone. When he moved, the women just swirled around him like it was second nature. He was like a walking hero, getting hurled straight through history itself. Then Ishua clocks that Allan was there and demands what they're doing, only for Allan to take over the conversation. He hurled a pot into the air and blared that he had the cure for every disease, like he'd just walked in with salvation. Allan blurts out that was the cure, and he swears it's way cheaper than any other potion going around, so there's no reason to panic, and Ishua immediately fires back asking where Allan even got that medicine. And the gentleman can't stop wondering what on earth was going on, while Marcella, the one who cared for the potions like they were her lifeline, was nearby and chose to watch, and then it hits him. She knows medicines like crazy about pretty much everything. And if he keeps messing with that, his life is going to blow up in his hands. Then the girl snaps it into focus. That's a Phoenix pill, a deadly drug that wrecks the mind, and Allan was basically toying with people, pretending it would act like a cure for everything, when all it did was get him branded with one of the worst crimes imaginable against humanity itself. Allan finally understands it's over. Ishua can't believe he got dragged into something like this, and Liliana, the heroine, refuses to look away. So yeah, Allan erupts into laughter, snatches the kid standing right beside him, yanks out a sword, and roars that it all happened because of the manabearer. Then Liliana snaps to Allan, the criminal, and asks if he really thinks things aren't getting worse, so she orders everyone to step back before they find out exactly what's about to go down. They dive straight into a world of wild fantasies. Allan slams the brakes and forces himself to stay silent. And that's when he stares ahead, trying to shake the feeling, wondering what the heck was going on back there. The child was already gone from his arms. Liliana yanked him out and dumped him straight into the world they'd built. And right then, Allan's totally wiped out as a problem for everyone around him. Allan slams his hand up, tells everyone to hold it, and says, "Just talk to me for a second, then you'll finally get the whole picture of what was going on." But when he stares ahead, his heart drops, those eyes are coming back. Then Allan snaps, "You realize you just walked into a criminal guild, right?" And those eyes start clawing at him again. But Allan begs for one more shot, and right then, he vows to boost everyone's ratings. Those eyes struck back again, and rage exploded in him. Just like that, the holy sword awakened, snapping to life with divine power. Ishua snaps that it was absolutely terrible. And right in that instant, he forged a blazing magic shield that protected everything. Allan can't stop thinking about what's going on. And the sickness hit him fast. And yeah, that's all thanks to Ishua's magic. His power boosts your mana recovery so hard it's brutal. But if you can't keep those concentrations up, your body pays the price fast and you get sick. Long ago, Yeshua told everyone no, told Asterisk himself Asterisk to learn how to stay calm, but in the end, he never listens to anyone. Now, there's no possible way he could have hit rock bottom any harder, because it's obvious he never trained enough. Yeshua shoots out an apology, and somehow it turns into a straight-up blowout attack on Allan. And he crumples to the ground. Then they step up and tell everyone straight up. They're taking Allan to the royal capital, and that's the best move to keep uncovering what's going on in the territory. Plus, they've drained all of Allan's magic, so nobody has to fear he'll tap into the magic sword's powers. But selling illegal drugs still dragged him below the lowest criminal line. One slip and he might get exiled, maybe even executed right then. Julia snaps that it was Ishua's fault. Then Diana leaned in to Liliana, firing off the question, "Did you already find something that can cause this disease?" Liliana says using magic is unmistakable, but she's pretty sure it was something lurking near the fountain. In that fountain, a magic circle pulsed hard, turning whatever touched it straight into dark magic power. And that might have been the whole reason, so Ishua shouts for everyone to back up and pushes them to move forward to clear it out, but Liliana snaps back that it's not that simple because there's more going on and things are getting thrown everywhere. Yeah, exactly how you'd guess it would play out. That whole incident was orchestrated by someone artificially from the shadows. And as Allan was dragged toward the royal capital, the criminals watched every step like it was their front row seat. He got snatched fast, but since it was a promise, they had to drag that guy in and force him to turn the captured into another criminal. It was like the client's request was already waiting for him in that room. The woman just grins as the criminals promise they'll get exactly what they were told. Then she rips off every piece of clothing she's wearing and the criminal smirks, sure, the deal is cash only unless she wants to pay with her body instead. But before they can even fight back, the attack hits and they're cut down for good. And there, waiting for them, was a demon named Undine, promising that their reward was to hunt down their own death. Meanwhile, she leans in and tells the former hero, Allan, how far he sank was terrifying, so bad he might even turn on humanity because of this. We snap back to Ishua and his crew, and they finally reach a spot that feels like the disease is stacked at its absolute worst, like every outbreak in the territory is packed into one place. A massive cave rumored as the very spot where the Calamity dragon sleeps. A week ago in the village, Ishua tore through every corner, hunting down the spots where those magic circles were at work, where mana got yanked and transferred from one place to the next. And yeah, that was probably just the tip of the iceberg, because the citywide magic haze was a bigger problem too. Only the spots with low magic power had it, and that's exactly where they were secretly trying to stash dark power. Anyone who could feel magic would clock it fast, unless they were the one working with the whirlpool. Then they'd only realize after the magic circle got released. But once that seal breaks, they can't steer what spills out, and every other magic current around them is tied together, so when one goes, the rest get dragged in. If that's the case, they need even more power, because if it's just this, how long would it take to wipe every last magic circle off the territory? Then Marcella snaps to an idea. What if there's a core out there, draining every last bit of magic power? Everything would funnel into one single core, one perfect focal point, and if they shattered that, it all falls apart. She says, if it's really like that, then we can treat it like a good sign, then we'll track the whole trail of magic power from start to finish and build our own session altar by powering it up first. Julia's mind races as she wonders how Ishua would redraw that magic circle, staring at the fact they're in a mechanics-only restricted zone, because if they do this wrong, it gets dangerously bad fast. But Ishua insists he only has to keep everything locked together so he can link the other magic circles, hunt the synchronization between their statuses, and spot every malfunction to hold the linked pieces in place, because those special ones are not supposed to be written in the center of the circle. With that, the magic circle starts tracing how magic power actually functions, then it basically redraws the whole thing. It watches the flow of magic power and boom, it gets rewritten. Ishua kept talking and not a soul in the room could understand a single word he said. But when Ishua gets that everything's under control, a chill hits. He realizes the magic circle has started to devour his magic power. And as it was pulled out bit by bit, the clues suddenly pointed him straight toward a location so far away it felt unreachable. Ishua spots it, so he decides to tail the swirling magic power outside the city, and right there, a road splits into many directions, all funneling down to the same single destination. It was the sheer, mind-blowing size of his massive magic power. And then he climbed straight for the mountain as the final destination loomed ahead. Then Ishua comes barreling back, demands a map for himself, and marks the exact spot without hesitation. It looks like a massive cave crouched at the base of that mountain, and everyone's hauling everything out. There, Liliana drops the truth. This is the very place where a dragon was sealed away. That dragon cave was the stuff of nightmares. Rumor said a legendary monster slept down in the dark, waiting. Every single person was terrified. Then straight into that cave, Marcella swears there's massive magic power all around them and someone's been hiding it tight so those detection spells can't sniff it out. A trap sat right in their path and Ishua clocked it instantly. Because with this many traps, a normal party would get wiped out on the spot, so they kick into magic power detection mode, using every bit of trap detect magic to push forward safely. Then Maria blurts out that the Calamity dragon was the same nightmare from old fairy tales, one that chewed through more than a handful of countries, and even when countless heroes fought tooth and nail to seal it away, it still never worked in the first place. That dungeon used to be required for high classification, until a late-arriving crew showed up at the very end and realized the dragon wasn't battling at all, it was curled up, sleeping soundly. After that, the dungeon got labeled as pointless, so they tore it down, sealed the entrance, and shut the whole thing for good. They even yanked the stone off the entrance so anyone could sneak in and chase the secret level info, because the only way through was something that makes everyone look like they're all part of a heroic squad. Diana couldn't see the legendary monster buried under all that sleeping mana they were guarding, and of course, that's why they burst out with their magic power. Tear open the sky and wake the Calamity dragon. Even if they somehow got word to the king, it would still take forever for him to rally the army, so if they ever managed to stir that dragon awake, they'd be completely out of options. So yeah, moving fast right now before that curse tightens its grip. But honestly, everyone's nerves were on fire. This was supposed to be a high-class dungeon, yet it already felt wrong and the tension kept rising. Allan's group had no chance compared to how many more members the others brought, so they were looking like they could power through and reach the end. Last time Maria and Marcella were hit with pure bad luck, but this time, something could flip the script and right in front of their eyes too. And then the monsters come crawling out of the shadows. And now Maria and Marcella both decide this is the moment to strike back, finally paying for everything that haunted them in the past. And then they explode into a full-on brawl. Diana was ecstatic too. She couldn't wait to get back out there and smash monsters again. They don't even need much magic power to take down monsters like that, and they can save their strength for a high-class dungeon later. Anyway, they pushed onward, forward, no looking back. Marcella was the only one who caught it on the path. The magic power split into three and it screamed, "Trap," meant to scatter and confuse the intruders. Liliana told them, "Leave it to me." And then she pulls up a map right on her screen. Julia leans in and blurts, "What are the other marks?" Because those places aren't random at all, they're rooms that lead straight to something important. They were priceless treasures. And with that, she drinks a magic power potion. So Ishua's mind immediately clicks that on her very first visit she's somehow mapping the whole dungeon, pulling up the layout, and grabbing the exact item she wants off the map. Honestly, that power is downright broken. But because that group was facing nothing but trouble, they ended up needing a high-class passage just to get through. Everything would have been way simpler. When he gets there, the place feels welcoming. Right in front of them, a massive portal looms over the main area. He can't stop wondering what the heck was going on. Right after he cracked it open, they finally snap into panic. Diana clocks it instantly because that smell hits like rotten meat and it's downright terrifying. And as he arrived, a crowd was already packed in, everyone staring straight at the dragon like they couldn't wait for it to do something. Yeshua finally cracked and fear hit him hard. Realizing the dragon was spiraling into something far worse, so lost it was basically rotting away from the inside, while its massive size towered like a nightmare. And right then, a few mages there clock the protagonist with his crew and start grilling them like, "So what are you doing here?" But here's the twist, they're not human and they're not demons either. Liliana steps forward and calls herself a heroine, then they push into the mystery behind what's going on in that territory, close by, only to hear the chilling truth. She's an enemy of the Demon King, and suddenly they realize, with dread in their gut, they've been following the Demon King all along. Which ends up terrifying everyone, but they're right there with the Divine Chaos Society. Yeshua demands what that society even is, and it turns out it's a religion that worships the Demon King, packed with wild believers who swear humans can be saved, even after they die. That means the Demon King built it, so they're not just dreaming. And now the whirlpool is begging to hear their voices, but first they have to revive the dragon that'll be instantly recognized. They do it all just to get the Demon King's approval, so they plan to resurrect that colossal dragon, and everyone knew it was pure madness. Then they snap into action, sharpening and raising his spears to take on the protagonist's crew. And yeah, everyone scrambles to get ready because their enemies aren't just heretics anymore. Still, they're human, so they'll need to grab everyone and squeeze out the truth. The long leader leans in and declares they're all fearless warriors, because chilling out is just not who they are. Then they start cutting some down and it turns into a massacre. Everyone gets picked off one by one, until every last one of them got captured. And the leader of the bunch leans in and demands, how is something like that so easy? It felt like the Divine Chaos Society's grand moment, something they were supposed to mark right then, and they couldn't wrap their heads around it falling apart like that. They were trying to pull it off with nothing but incomplete status, and they were stuck with it, because even if they push forward with something like this. He poured his whole life into serving the Demon King, then he drops the bomb that death is the one true salvation. So he hands over that dark magic straight to the dragon, then watches it awaken again, alive. Then all that dark magic concentration gets shoved into the dragon, and it starts roaring upward, growing faster than anyone can blink. The dragon was slipping back to life, and then bam, an earth-shaking roar tore through the air. They realized the dragon was finally stirring, and it was waking up for real. The moment he wakes up, all his magic power explodes into the air like a storm breaking loose. Every single one of them was terrified, scared out of their minds about what might have just happened in that exact moment. Yeshua stared ahead, practically buzzing with curiosity, dying to know what was coming next. Right in the middle, the cave gave way completely. Liliana was terrified, and Diana had figured that out ages ago, because the fairy tale beast that wiped out countless islands isn't just a monster, it's way stronger than it has any right to be. It turned out to be a Calamity dragon. Julia yells, "Is everyone okay?" But it turns out that was just a breath attack, and somehow it still ripped the whole mountain apart. Another attack was barreling in, but the dragon's arm had already snapped off. And then it ripped the sky open, blasting out lightning with everything it had. And just like that, it freaked out every single person standing nearby. The dragon still hauled itself upright, and when they looked around, they realized the mountain was gone. Everyone was absolutely terrified at that moment. It still stood strong even after losing an arm, because the body wasn't done yet. Every trapped soul was terrified of what would come next, until the truth hit, they couldn't clean up those people right then. They had to push through every mission and stay sharp because Liliana rose up to be used as magic, and just like that, her staff erupted in shining light. Right after Diana said she was going to face a legendary dragon. And it looks like they've got no choice left, only one path forward, face that monster head-on. At that exact moment, Liliana starts pouring powers into Diana, so Diana can finally unleash the sword of creation, and then she slams into the fight with everything she's got. Marcella throws out a burst of spells and makes it happen in the blink of an eye. Unleash thunder on that dragon, and right then, at that exact moment, strike. Marcella finally unleashes her weapons, exactly like Yeshua drilled into her, and that's when everything changes. Rage out and strike every target at the same time. Then they couldn't help wondering, did it actually work? Even with everything going on, the dragon's shadow stayed razor clear, like it hadn't moved at all. Diana's heart slammed with fear. They figured they could still push with high attacks, but the dragon's strike came in with everything, crushing them and leaving no doubt it hit with an absurd, unstoppable force. The ground just vanished beneath him, like the world suddenly gave up. Then Liliana suddenly saw it. Her fantasy world's ground had shattered under a massive, brutal force, and Ishua immediately started scrambling for anything he could do. Because one hit from that monster would have wiped every single one of them out in one blow. Liliana snaps that they can't just eat an attack, they have to dodge every single thing flying at them right now, and even in this fantasy world, that monster's magic resistance is brutally immense, but they can't make it all work by sheer will alone. Then Julia launches a full-force direct attack, no mercy, no warning. But then it accidentally breaks off a piece of the dragon. And then it clicked, yeah, that worked, and they were probably running the whole purification process on repeat. But right then, it started regenerating, like it was coming back from the brink in real time. So they've got to wipe out every monster right then, because while they're distracted, that arm gets ripped off, then somehow slams back into place, and they can't purge all the dark mana in one go like they did with the Ogre King on the Tree of Life. With all that dark power pouring in, Ishua had no clue how long it would take to shut it down, unless it was one of those instant death attacks that would come flying at them right away, because they couldn't afford to waste a second. Then hope started to crumble, and everyone felt it slipping away. But Ishua shuts it down. If he's fully healed, then maybe they can try something again. Julia's attack landed, wrecked them a bit, and somehow they pulled it off to take the damage. Ishua tells them this plan might only work if the combo in their lives lines up, because everything hinges on how much Ishua will need as support, and whether everyone can honestly be okay with that. Ishua keeps his cool, and somehow everyone else does too, because they trust him so hard that from the very start they've decided they'll stay right at his side, even though he hasn't laid out the plan yet. Maria snaps that he won't have to do something like that, because ever since this whole crew first formed, they've been orbiting Ishua, and Liliana swears it's simple. Everyone puts their life in his hands. Ishua finally gets it, everyone's betting their trust on him, and in a place like this, he can't just keep it all to himself, he has to trust them back. He can't stop smiling after hearing that from everyone. Then he turns straight to Maria, Marcella, and Julia, telling them to unleash their absolute strongest attacks on Ishua right now. And they're completely baffled. And as time kept rolling, Diana and Liliana had to figure out how to survive that dragon. Diana knows they can't mess around anymore. She tells everyone to take the Calamity dragon's tension seriously. Then Julia presses Ishua, "Are you sure you really want to do this?" And Maria shoots back, "I don't know, maybe we can't." Julia comes in swinging with everything she's got, just like Marcella does, then Maria jumps in too. Every single attack comes crashing straight at Ishua. So he figures this offensive might actually change everything. Then we rewind a bit and watch Ishua lay the whole plan out to the crowd. He's pushing a tribute transformation, something most people barely even know exists, and the wild part is this. Magic attributes can be converted into a totally different attribute. And if they pull it off, the cause could turn into a total loss, plus the power would drain away fast, which is exactly why they couldn't use it just a short time ago. Ishua was putting the theory to work, pushing it so he could convert everything with flawless precision, and even they could feel it. Whatever he was trying to do next might not just be powerful, it could twist Ishua into something terrifying. With this trick, he unleashes everyone's magic in glorious sync, aiming straight for the enemy's weak spot and knocking them down, and right after that heals instantly. Maria can't shake the thought, what if he just one-shots the dragon with a single, brutal attack that blasts off a whole swarm of 100% hit attribute spells at once? Because if that lands, that monster is about to take catastrophic damage. That's why they were lining up their shots straight at the monster, because if Ishua botches it and gets himself killed, they may burn through their chances for a while, but they'll still have time to hold out until the king's army shows up. Then Julia snaps that no matter what's going wrong, there's no way he could ever end up taking his own life. And Ishua got completely swallowed by the unknown. But he'd build everything off Julia's magic, and first he'd seize control of it. Then Ishua finally unleashes his power, because that performance he pulled off with a Julia chant proved he didn't need any extra analysis. So he rockets forward and makes it happen fast. Then Marcella unleashed Divine Thunder, turning everything electric. Even when he tried, Ishua couldn't match Julia's power, but because they'd been moving side by side all this time, he finally seized control, rewired his thunder into pure glory, and slammed it together with Julia's brand new glory, and the result was absolutely unreal. Marcella was totally stunned, utterly lost as she tried to make sense of it all. And now Maria's cursed sword came crashing back into the spotlight. No matter how carefully Ishua handled it, that rare blade still refused to be tamed, because everything hinged on just how well he could control its power. But it was awful, maybe he won't pull it off in time. The girls are terrified, so someone shouts out "Issue" to grab everyone's attention. Then it hit him, too late to stop the thoughts he just couldn't control, and yeah, that whole can't be used thing didn't even matter anymore. And he twists mana through distortion, gearing up that attack like a weapon being forged in real time. So it went dormant for a bit, buying Ishua just a few precious seconds to think. He snatches it up at top speed, and when he finally lands it, yeah, maybe that's all he needed. The blast finally drops and slams into the ground with full force. Suddenly everyone's terrified right at that moment. Ishua finally blurts out, right when it needed to happen, right on the dot. He somehow fused every attack from this point forward, and now he's left staring at his next move, thinking, what do I do? Ishua tells them that if they pull off super dense mana compression, they can freeze spacetime for a moment, meaning he didn't just cast a trick, he actually slowed time itself, and Julian remembers that spell too. One that showed up out of nowhere a few years ago. Right then, the dragon locks onto them from the distance and charges in with everything he's got, going straight for them. Liliana begs them to stay sharp, because the Calamity dragon can sense every move he makes and keeps his eyes locked on them. So from now on, everyone needs to watch Ishua like a hawk and pay attention, no more taking him lightly. So yeah, after all that info, they jump in and start slicing those dragons with everything they've got. And once they finally understood they couldn't hurt a thing, they just shrugged them off and ignored them completely. So Julia parades her fresh glory and slams the dragon's wings. Ishua keeps it cautious for a beat, but when he asks what she's doing, Liliana has already gone too far, so she lunges in and tells Ishua to push forward with everything she's got. Then he taps into his brand new glory power and unleashes it like it's his own private miracle. So the dragon snapped back with a whole other laser, and yeah, it was brutal because it wasn't just firing back, it was retaliating hard. Then Ishua leans in and swears that every last bit of magic was used with razor-sharp precision. But he was just messing around. He casts the enchantment, and just like that, everything morphs into pure magic. Diana unleashes everything she's got, swinging the sword of creation like it's the end of the world. So the Calamity dragon finally gets their hands on that long-hoarded vase of energy power, and just like that, Diana's obsession starts to crumble and fade. That's when Ishua hooked into the enchantment, linking his magic with Diana's sword, riding on those conversion attributes of the glorious magic, until it all snapped into one deadly final attack. Diana snaps, "Hand it over, leave it to me." And the dragon gets sliced clean in half, right down the middle. Ishua hurled his magic, and it slammed into the dragon, bursting into a massive explosion. That might have worked. Now he's left staring into the nightmare like, how do I even beat the Calamity dragon? What we're missing is the one thing that could chain. See how they'd handle every last breath that came at them. Because it was closing in on them fast, both girls froze in fear, and Ishua snapped that their plan never accounted for this, then admitted he'd just forgotten they could defend themselves the moment things turned dangerous. But they can't let their hope die, because right now he's stuck wondering what to do next until the memory hits. The classes where the teacher insisted magic was inevitable, built from theoretical magic just like humans imagine, and once it all felt impossible. But that's how he could slam on teleportation anytime. I thought this was true once, and now I'm flipping that idea on its head. Now Ishua lunges to the floor with every ounce of strength he's got. To forge a magic field just to pin the spell back for a split second, yeah, Ishua's magic power pulled off something downright freaky. Concentration was all they had, and even then, doubts gnawed at them. What could anyone have done back in that land? High-density mana warps spacetime, and if you slammed the area with a massive mana concentration, it would likely choke off the mana ahead of them. But the clock was ticking. There wasn't time to waste, because if a space break happened halfway through, those coordinates would snap together the wrong way, which carves out a gap, so Yeshua gets shoved into yet another space. And right then they're all like, wait, where in the world did he go? It was a rift between the world of tremor and causality. One slip in there and he'd be stranded forever, unable to claw his way back to the original world or the original time. He has to hang on because one slip and his whole life slips out of his grasp. Julia's smile flashes across his face, and there was no doubt he'd reach that place for sure. Whatever hits us next. Right after that, the dragon's rampage roars past them, close enough to feel the heat. And the whole place goes silent with fear. Everyone's panicking, yelling, "Where's Ishua?" Nobody had a clue what was going on in that exact moment. Liliana's tears explode, and she starts crying right then and there. Then someone slips in behind them. It was Ishua, who slammed straight onto Julia, gasping out apologies the whole time. He asks if she's okay, says he used Julia's mark to get back to that world, and before he can even process it, she barrels into Ishua and hugs him with pure, overwhelming force. Meanwhile, Diana grills him, "Are you sure you'd take the dragon's hit?" And then he pulls off teleportation using the theory in modern magic that's supposed to be pure impossible. Then Ishua suddenly remembered his past attempt, how he'd managed to treat space and time like separate things, and how teleportation turned out to be pure, unbeatable space magic, just as Marcella asked what on earth that was, because that truth still couldn't be dropped on humanity yet. Even if the theory's rock solid, it still won't happen unless they can wield magic on the same level as Ishua, so in the end, only Ishua can pull it off. So they shelved the compliments for later and pushed forward. Then Maria slid up and asked, "Wait, is that really the end?" And now they finally stood their ground against the legendary Calamity dragon. Liliana steps up and asks Ishua if it's time to head back to the castle and spill everything they've been through. Then, out of nowhere, she finally manages to say his name by herself, and that tiny win instantly turns into pure embarrassment. A few days slipped by, and then they finally marched into the king's presence and spilled every detail. Everything was so impossible he couldn't even process it. How 6 people alone pulled off the unthinkable and brought down the Calamity dragon. Thousands of years ago, ancient tales swore that a few heroes barely managed to seal that beast, and even then, it happened without warning. The king snaps, "So that's what you were talking about. I heard some islands got wiped clean off the map. Now they're forced to carve a statue of them right in the middle of the plaza, but everyone freaks out, begging him to stop because nobody wants that to be shamefully obvious." The gentleman orders that the expedition plans be set up, and the king snaps back, "This isn't business, it's a banquet right now." But right after Ishua drops the line that he's got something he's desperate to tell the king. And he's convinced Allan is right at the center of it, because the king is utterly clueless, like he has no idea what's happening. And he tells them, "Listen, this isn't a message you pass around. I've got something I have to tell Ishua straight to his face."